GM, everybody, KEP Posse. It's Sunday. It's Sunday morning, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. I am Kianga Ellis, Sunday, November 23rd, and this is the KEP Sunday Shows Watch Party. And I am coming a little bit early. We did this for the first time last week, and I really enjoyed it. I hope that you did too. So when I saw the news, I was a little bit on the fence, like, should we do this regularly? When I saw MTG's post in the news yesterday morning, because I had been off of X like Friday evening. Imagine that. I was like, we have to discuss, like, we have to do the watch party again. So we are, and I need to get set up. And I wanted to talk with you all also about some of the inspiration for this project, some of the story, because, well, what had happened was I watched the American Revolution yesterday. I got halfway through it. So I watched 3 of the episodes, and that's like 6 hours. So I did a lot of that yesterday, and it was just so much there. And I have, for my entire life, studied the American Revolution. I grew up in Boston. I went to an independent girls' school in Boston where we were hammered with this history. I mean, we were hammered with a version of this history like 1980s style. And so watching this, and I have, in my later years, revived this passion for colonial America and the history that I hated so much as a child because it was just shoved down my throat. I thought I would never. One of my vivid memories of childhood is just feeling like this will never end. Like, this is an eternal now of the Boston Revolution, the Revolutionary War and colonial America. This is a forever now. I will never grow up. I will never get out of here. This will never, ever, ever, ever end. And I felt that way for just like basically from 1980 till 1991 when I did actually leave. And now I'm over 50 years old. Like, well, yeah, not only does it end, but then life just goes boom. And so watching American Revolution yesterday, brought back a lot of nostalgia. And then this morning when I got up, I just was kind of on fire with how that history and how my growing up in Boston really has shaped me and really has informed the last year of my life, where I've just gone absolutely bananas about politics. I'm supposed to be setting up because I don't even have my lighting sorted. Let me just put a pin in it because, basically where I was going with that was to just tell you that I just started looking around the 3RN headquarters where I am and looking at books, and I was like, oh, I wanna tell the KEP posse about, this book, and then I just ended up like pulling all these books off the shelf. And I was like, oh my God, I just wanna show these books to you that have been a part of my life and my own journey and have informed, this Kianga Ellis Projects thing started really 20 years ago. And if you go to kiangaellis.com, you can see a little bit of an archive of the story of the 2000s, me in the 2000s, me in the 2010s. And then more recently, as I've, revived what this project is and needs to be for the next 25 years. So I have all these books stacked around, and I wanted to, just have a little bit of a chat about the documentary and, just what's on my heart right now before, 9 a.m. is really where we're here for. We're really here to watch the shows, and I give you my brilliant takes. And so let me just finish the setup here. This is not professional. I am not a professional. This is not a professional operation. This is from the heart. So you just are going to have to see all of how sausage is made, if that's okay with you all. So let me do that quickly. And I didn't get time to make my coffee or eat anything. So we're going to see how this goes. So hopefully I can get all of that done and chat with you about, the bibliography of Kianga Ellis Projects. um, yeah. And then anyway, maybe the bulk of that will have to be the wrap up. So if any of you hang out the entire time, or you want to come back at around, I don't know, 11:30, that's probably, or it just depends on what's on the shows really as to when we'll sort of wrap up. We'll definitely watch CNN State of the Union. We'll definitely watch Meet the Press, and then we'll see if we can take any much more. Okay, all right, let me do the lighting and do some things. So sit tight. I'm just gonna get everything ready. Hopefully, I connected to the wired internet this time. Hopefully, the resolution will be better. I think I do need better lighting than I think we had last week. Let me get that going. The sound, I think the sound when I watched the replay, I think the sound was actually pretty good. I had been worried about that. I had been worried about if you would be able to hear the television through. Oh, getting some light on the situation. And it's dark outside. It's cloudy. So, all right, let me finish this. Let me turn on. Let's get the TV ready. Let's get the TV ready. Because, I lose track of time when I'm talking to you all, and then I don't want to not be ready when the show starts. So we'll get CNN all queued up. Can you hear that? And also, I have been offline for, like a 24 hours. I don't really even know what's broken in the last 24 hours. It's very necessary to do social media Sabbath and detoxing and touching grass and being outside and being with other humans, like in person. I try to do that. Okay, let's. Gotta bring in more of the bibliography. Let me do this. Let me do this. Yoga goes on here. Yoga goes on. Not yoga. Not really yoga, but floor exercises, body work, necessary when you get to be my age. I mean, it's just no longer optional. You can't function. I can't function without a certain amount of movement, especially spending so much time in front of the screen, right? Okay. Oh, a little too far. I yanked the TV out of the wall. I yanked the cord out of the wall. I have to replace that. So hang on. Let's see. All right, hang on. This is how sausage is made for the watch party. I have no you all are just gonna see it all. You're gonna see how sausage is made. All right, let's see. Did I fix that? I still don't know how to work these TVs. What is going on? Okay, so just to catch you up, those of you who are joining, this is the Kianga Ellis Projects Sunday Show's watch party, and it's very open kimono here. And I'm trying to set things up, and I don't know what I did. I pulled the TV out of the wall, and now it's not coming back on. Ah, there you go. I pulled it out of the wall, and I pulled it out of the back of the TV, so that's why it wasn't coming on. Ah, see? Ah, okay, here we go. Let's get back to CNN. How's that? When you overdo it, undo it. I have both a landscape. Hang on, this is not needed right now. I have both a landscape. I'm streaming this, obviously, and I use this software. I mean, this is what streamers use, this software that allows me to broadcast on Rumble, X, and YouTube at the same time. And now it's this new option where I'm able to get a recording that's in landscape and vertical at the same time. So I'm just adjusting so that the vertical recording will also have the television in it. Okay. All right, I'm going to, so we're early. Good morning, GM. Okay, we don't want to spoil this. I don't want to like hear anything yet. Like I said, I haven't checked. I haven't really been on the socials this morning. I don't know what people have been talking about since yesterday morning. And I wanted to have time to talk about the bibliography for Kianga Ellis Projects and the friend circle, you know, specifically the friends of Kianga Ellis Projects that I have been talking about for the past week. Enter the circle of trust. So I'll have this on, but I'm not going to put the volume on because I just want us to save all of our smoke, you know, save all of our passion for, you know, the official start, which is 9 a.m. in 16 minutes when State of the Union comes on. And so I am just not even going to have time to get into the bibliography. So just, you know, hang out because I need to make my second coffee of the morning. So I also need to get the books. Just to recap, for those of you who are just joining, we are going to watch the Sunday political shows, which is something that I do. And last week I thought it'd be fun to set up a live stream and do it, you know, with you guys on the internets. And that was pretty cool. And in particular, when I saw that MTG is planning to resign yesterday, I was like, okay, definitely have to do it again today. And then yesterday also, I watched half of the PBS, Ken Burns, The American Revolution, and that just stirred up, you know, all the feels and all of my, you know, personal origin story. And then this morning when I got up, something possessed me, and I was going through all the bookshelves and like, oh yeah, that book is so important, and this book is part of the, you know, the inspiration and the shaping of Kianga Ellis Projects, which naturally has something to do with the person whose name is in it, which is me. And yeah, I just got inspired to also share with you these books that have been so, you know, that I've read over the years, and some I haven't read, some I need to go back to. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of talk to you about them. I thought, these are this is the bibliography for Kianga Ellis Projects. It's like social art practice meets, I don't even know. I'm calling it tactical futurism. And the essay that we published on on Substack, our Substack at Kianga Ellis, check it out. First, I got the Banny, then I got the Power. Really outlines all of the major themes of this work that has been ongoing as a part of my life for over 20 years. And now in 2025, it's just taken on a whole new ambition, a whole new spectacle, and a 25-year vision. And that's all kind of encapsulated in the Rural Rapid Response Network. So yeah, there's a lot to it. There's a lot of pieces to it. And showing you these books and talking a little bit about what's important about each of these books, how they tie into the shaping of what Kianga Ellis Projects has been, and then what it is that we're doing going forward. And so what's really important as you think about what it means to enter the circle of trust and become a part of the Friends of Kianga Ellis Projects and or the Rural Rapid Response Network at some point, is that we're on the same page about the mission, that we really are reflective on what are our values, what informs our perspective, what has informed our identity. So it's naturally a question of history, and there's no time where it's more necessary that we all take another look at history, our own history, our own origin story. And now as a nation, we have this great opportunity of the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence to really go back and investigate the origin story of where we are right now, and whether this is going to be the end of the American experiment, because it sure feels like it, or is it going to be a new beginning? So I'm in the camp of it's going to be a new beginning, but only if each of us has the courage to unearth the past and just be resigned to stare it dead in the face, to resist the comfort that comes with a Disneyfication of our past. And we should do this. I mean, this is sort of the journey that I've been on. We should do this as both an inquiry of our own origin story, our own birth, and the birth of the nation, and kind of track, I mean, in a parallel track, in your own way, wrestle with that discovery. Yeah. So I'm doing that, and I'm going to do it on the internet because why not? That's the moment. And the tactical futurism is about going beyond, philosophy or writing deep thoughts or thinking deep thoughts and pontificating about whatever is possible with just our words and with our brilliance, but that we're going to put our hands on it. We're going to work it out with each other in meat space, in what it is that we do. So tactical futurism is, wrestling with the past and wrestling with where we are headed, unless we course correct. But, the legacy and the example of futurist artists, that's our only path out of here. Like, if we want to get through this transition, some people want to call it a fourth turning. I don't know what it is. It stinks in some ways, but actually the pain of it, the crucible that we're in, is something we should not run from. We should just like, I have a t-shirt that says no pain, no main. You know, we should just lean into the fire. We should let it crush us. And so we can emerge like a diamond. I mean, that is how I think we have to revamp our thinking. And so that's sort of some of what this project is about. And now there's 9 minutes I've been talking, and I have to make a coffee, and I'm going to do that. So hang out, hang in, and I'm not even going to I'm going to mute this. Well, I'm going to keep the TV muted because you don't want to hear, or do you? Do you want to hear the commercial? It's very meta, right? All right, I'm going to make a coffee, and I'll be right back. And I am tripping over cords. Very clumsy.
Everywhere you go. It's only everything. The college football playoffs. 12 teams in one national champion will be crowned. The college football playoff begins December 19th in front on ESPN TNT. Closed captioning is brought to you by Skechers Kids Footwear.
Now you can know where your good shoes are and get your air compatible sneakers. There's a clever hidden compartment, and you can see where your good shoes are and find my hand. New from Skechers.
It's been just over a month. President Trump began the demolition of the east wing of the White House to make way for that massive new ballroom. And now he's taking a swing at another presidential makeover, this time at the two 18-hole golf courses on a nearby military base where presidents have traditionally teed off. After devoid hazards, Trump has enlisted the Golden Bear. Yes, golf icon Jack Nicklaus, winner, of course, of more major championships than anyone in history to lead that effort. See, in fact, the climb during this now. So Trump has taken so much interest in all these remodeling projects. So much focus of his presidency has been on these makeovers. What do you know about, one, how much does it cost? Do you have any idea about that? And then two, what's happening behind the scenes and how Trump is dealing with this?
Right, Monty. Well, we don't know at this point how much this is going to cost or who is going to pay for it. What we do know is that President Trump has been remarkably hands-on when it comes to remaking Washington, spending hours just yesterday with the golf legend turned golf course developer Jack Nicklaus, taking aerial tours at Joint Base Andrews. But the president is also paying very close attention to that White House ballroom renovation. He leads weekly meetings at the White House where they discuss details as small as the size of windows to the placement of bathrooms to interior finishes. And he's also been visiting foreign leaders and members of Congress on their opinions on design choices. We also know that the president has personally selected the limestone for the White House.
Bibliography.
New chandeliers.
I'm going to talk to you guys about all this stuff. Okay.
And south lawns.
But at the end, during the wrap up,
his style and taste on the White House.
And maybe I probably won't. I'll be here for hours if I try to do all of it.
Building. He went on Fox News a couple of weeks ago and floated the idea of painting the EEOB white. That is that sprawling Gilded Age building. Right. Very, very polarizing, though, and it serves as office space for most White House staffers. But the group of historic preservation has stepped in and is asking the Trump administration to pause any changes to this building unless they go through this standard review process. The Trump administration, for example, to halt any changes.
I have this book that I bought, like,
going to paint that building until at least December.
I think I got this in 2009. And I was like, I think this is relevant. I think the Zombie Combat Manual, A Guide to Fighting the Living Dead, I believe this belongs in the Kianga Ellis Projects bibliography. This was 2009. I had been working at Lehman Brothers during the collapse, and 2009 was a very interesting year. So anyway, this is in the bibliography. All right, I guess I'm doing a little bit of it in the 4 minutes and while the coffee's on. The Everyday, a contemporary art book, documents of contemporary art, is kind of talking about, in recent decades, artists have progressively expanded the boundaries of art as they have sought to engage with an increasingly pluralistic environment, blah, blah, blah. Some of these, some very, very fascinating books on policy from the 80s. The Charitable Appeals Fact Book, How Black and White Americans Respond to Different Types of Fundraising Efforts. Yeah, 1989. And then, yeah, I've been studying and interested in Black philanthropy. I wonder why. So I've got a lot of books on that. I hope this isn't too heavy. Yeah, this set of books about the Chinese explorations before Columbus to North America. And yeah, so here this book, Toward a Tenderer Humanity and a Nobler Womanhood, African American Women's Clubs in Turn of the Century Chicago. You know, looking at how, let me just sit for 1 second. Looking at how Americans approached philanthropy and service at the turn of the 20th century is a good window into where I think we need to go going forward. Much more hands-on, much more local, individuals taking responsibility for their own neighbors, you know, citizen adjacent action before we had government, this massive, massive, massive government that promised everyone, you know, handouts and solutions and, you know, increased dependency, and how this absolutely ravaged certainly the African American community, middle class. You know, it's been destructive for absolutely everybody. Naturally, with my own origin story, I'm more familiar with some impacts than others. And of course, I have a collection of talks by Andreas Anatopoulos about the Internet of Money, because we are a crypto native project. We are on chain, and these early concepts are essential for us to dig into as to, you know, what is it all about, Web3, crypto, Bitcoin, and how we are using it in this project. So 1 minute to go, and my coffee's ready, and most of the books are there. We're going to talk about it at the wrap up after. So let me put this up, and everybody get ready. You know, you can, of course, you can't see the TV super great from here, obviously, through multiple screens. So feel free, if you have the setup, to put it on alongside this stream. If you're watching on the stream, you could drop me a chat and let me know what you're doing, what you're thinking. And yeah, we're gonna have 1 minute, and then State of the Union is gonna start.
Apply now. Join.ice.gov. The holidays are all about giving, but at the RAM Wrap Up the Year sales event, it's all about getting. Get 0% APR financing for 60 months. Get the strongest RAM 1500 ever. And get it all backed by a 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty. Nothing stops RAM. Don't let anything stop you from getting a great deal at the RAM Wrap Up the Year sales event.
Right now, purchase this Ram 1500 and get 0% financing for 60 months. Plus, no monthly payments for 90 days and a 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain limited warranty on the 2026 Ram 1500.
I missed a lot while traveling for work. Then Meta created new jobs in Los Lunas. Now, I don't worry about missing out anymore.
Thursday morning, join CNN for live coverage of the biggest parades from coast to coast. John Berman, Erica Hill, and Sarah Seidner host Thanksgiving in America. Live coverage starts Thursday at 8 on CNN and launch on the CNN.
New York City's Democratic Socialist mayor-elect and President Donald Trump seeing eye to eye on affordability.
I wanted to do a great job. I look forward to working together to deliver that affordability.
Is the White House now behind some of Zohran Mamdani's proposals? President Trump's top economic advisor Kevin Hassett joins me next. Plus, Mamdani in MTG out. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene doing a Beltway mic drop after turning from Trump defender to Trump antagonist.
I refuse to be a backward wife, hoping it all goes away and gets better.
One of her staunchest critics, Texas Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, is here. Our political panel will also weigh in on her resignation. And
Oh, this is going to be so painful. Jasmine Crockett and Mandami. I mean, this is the theater. This is the fake politics that they're shoving down our throats. And we will suffer through it just because it's Sunday, but we are aware.
In Washington, where the State of our Union is in the upside down, the same day that President Trump had an Oval Office love fest with New York City's new Democratic Socialist Mayor Zohran Mamdani, MAGA firebrand Marjorie Taylor Greene announced that she's going to resign from Congress, essentially chased out by President Trump, she suggests. Greene has been one of President Trump's most loyal supporters, but the relationship has broken down recently over his handling of the Epstein files. No love lost from the president, who wrote on Truth Social, quote, for some reason, primarily that I refused to return her never-ending barrage of phone calls, Marjorie went back, end quote. This just hours after President Trump embraced a former nemesis, Mayor-elect Mamdani. The two New Yorkers all smiled.
What is really going on? Inquiring minds want to know.
We spoke about rent, we spoke about groceries, we spoke about utilities, we spoke about the different ways in which people are being pushed out. I look forward to working together to deliver that affordability for New Yorkers.
Some of his ideas really have the same ideas that I have. A big thing on cost, the new word is affordability.
I'm joined now by the director of the National Economic Council at the White House, Kevin Hassett. Thank you so much for being here, Kevin. So Mayor-elect Mamdani has touted 4 signature policies to help bring prices down for New Yorkers. There's universal child care, free buses, city-owned grocery stores, and a rent freeze on rent-stabilized apartments. Is there anything there that the White House will work with Mamdani on?
Look, President Trump made it clear that he loves New York City and he wants it to be successful. And he brought the mayor down to talk about basically those policies and other things that we could do to make life in New York more affordable. Now, none of those really jump off the page for me as really strong ideas, but I think that if Mamdani cares as much as he appears to for the people of New York, that President Trump obviously does, I think that there's a lot of positive work that can be done together.
Well, right before the election, President Trump threatened to withhold federal funding from New York City if Mamdani were elected. Was that just all bluster? He didn't mean it?
Well, it feels like he doesn't mean it now. And I guess we'll have to wait to see what Mamdani does. I think that we were really reassured that we've kept the police commissioner. And so in the previous administrations in New York, we've seen law and order really go south. As you know, Jake, I lived in New York quite a while. I was a professor at Columbia and NYU Law School. And New York always feels like safety is on the edge. And so the fact that Mamdani, as the mayor, has agreed to keep the police commissioner is a kind of sign that maybe he'll be able to work together with President Trump. We're sure hopeful that we can. And President Trump really wants to work with everybody who cares about the future of American people. We're at times disagreeing about policies, but I think that the objective of making life better for everybody is something that a lot of people share on the Democratic and Republican side.
Let's talk about affordability. In the Truth Social post, the president said prices are, quote, already coming down, unquote. Now, it is true. Some items are coming down. That's accurate, but overall prices are going up. Prices in September were 1.4% higher than in January and 2.4% higher than they were in September 2024 under President Biden. Is this actual data being kept from President Trump?
No, I think, look, the inflation is coming down. There are a lot of prices are coming down. Inflation is coming down. And I think that if you go year over year that you're putting the really high Biden inflation years for the second half of last year, you're saying that's President Trump's fault. Don't forget that December and January, you're looking at 0.4s and 0.5s for inflation. So you multiply that by 12, you get really big inflation numbers. So inflation is coming down and the prices of a lot of things are coming down. But the bottom line is, and this is something that I really would like to emphasize, is that because of the higher inflation and because of the higher interest rates, the typical mortgage for the average American in the US went from about $1,200 to about $2,400. That's the monthly payment. At the same time, because grocery prices went up at 1.9%, on average 5%, then that added hundreds and hundreds of dollars more of expenses per month. We did some estimate at the National Economic Council that all in the extra monthly cost or extra annual costs for all that stuff, the higher mortgage and everything else under Joe Biden, was about $25,000 for a typical family. And so we're making progress. The mortgage rate has come down a couple $100 a month. A lot of grocery prices have leveled off or come down, but there's a lot of progress to be made. And we understand why people are frustrated. And it goes to show why inflation is such a terrible thing and such a powerful political influence. I'm sure that inflation is one of the main reasons why Trump won in a landslide.
Right, but the prices are up more than 2.2 percentage points from last September compared to September 2024 compared to today. And yesterday morning, President Trump posted on Truth Social, quote, "I have just gotten the highest poll numbers of my political career. While my great work on the economy has not yet been fully appreciated, it will be. Things are really rocky." I don't know what poll numbers he's referring to because PBS News YouGov poll has 75% saying the president's not focused enough on lowering prices. Fox poll, Trump's lowest.
The poll of like 1,000 people. That's where they get these numbers from.
Actually making things worse. Vice President Harris.
Do you all understand who is contacted when they give you these polls? I mean, it was unbelievable to look under the hood for the New York City mayoral race, where they used propaganda and media to convince you not to vote for Curtis Sliwa, because they said, and they sent out their bots, their AI bots, to harass everybody on social media. He can't win. He doesn't have numbers. He can't win. I mean, it was a whole coordinated campaign and everybody fell for it. But like this latest Fox poll that was the other day, if you read the fine print, it's like 1,000 people. That's where they get these numbers from. This country has how many hundreds of millions? And they take 1,000 people. And have you ever been asked to vote? Where are they getting these 1,000 people? So, I mean, the polls, we just don't know.
People are going to look at their pockets to decide if they might be ahead or might not. And I think that they're going to find that they're ahead. There's one thing that we've also noticed, if you look at sentiment, which is really polling, that sentiment tends to go really south where there's a government shutdown. And that's something that just happened out in a Michigan survey that was very disappointing.
Let me just ask you, prices are about to get a whole lot worse if Obamacare subsidies are not extended. There is a bill, a bipartisan bill in the House. Congressman Don Bacon is the lead Republican, or one of the lead Republicans on that, a Republican from Nebraska, to address some of the issues that Republicans have with the Obamacare premiums while also extending them. Is that something that President Trump would sign if it arrived on his desk, some sort of compromise to extend these premiums so many Americans, millions, don't have their premiums go up without any support?
Well, what President Trump has said is that he's looking forward to working together with Congress to work on this problem. The bottom line is that I think that what Republicans are saying is that when we started to put the big subsidies into Obamacare, that basically most of those subsidies went into the insurance company profits. And so, in fact, the inflation for the Obamacare premiums was about double that for private insurance. And so what President Trump has said is, let's give people the money in something like a health savings account and let them decide which Obamacare policy they want to buy. And that will help put downward pressure on these runaway premiums for Obamacare.
All right, Kevin Hassett, thank you so much for your time. Hope you have a happy Thanksgiving with your family.
And happy Thanksgiving. I hope it's good in Philadelphia.
Thank you. Coming up, Marjorie Taylor Greene stuns Washington by announcing her resignation. I'm going to talk with somebody who's been repeatedly a nemesis of Greene, Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett of Texas.
Oh my God. I don't know if I could do it. So part of why I started doing these live streams is that watching the Sunday shows is that misery loves company. And obviously I do like it. Obviously I have some fun with it, but there is a level of extreme agony to watch the mainstream media and to see some of these performers who have been, selected and placed in office to have to watch them. And it's something that I do like nearly every day because, yeah, I just am obsessed, and I'm there taking the bullets for you all. And I keeping my eye on what they're all saying, what they're all doing. Also, because I know that, the perspective that I'll get if I just rely on what's trending or what the algorithm is showing me or the soundbite is absolute deception. I mean, it's just not even, and you're never going to be, you can't be smart enough to think your way past the media as it is today. The way these devices operate on our brains, the way language and words and image hypnotize us, the mind control that we're all suffering from. So the first thing is to take a dose of humility and develop methods. How can I just try to see through the fog? How can I try to challenge my own impulses, my own direction of thinking? One of the books in the bibliography is so important. Do I have it here? Yes. We're going to talk about this, not today, but this explains absolutely everything. And to go back to, some of the philosophy and the warnings from the 60s and 70s. So like 60s and 70s, art, philosophy, sci-fi, there are warnings as to where we were going with some of the changes that were emerging at that time. And then to think about where we are and how do those things match up is very illuminating. Very illuminating. So yeah, I'm really bracing myself that we have to hear from Jazzy Crockett. I know everyone knows that she's an invention. She is exhibit A as to why if I don't have hate in my heart, because I am a child of God, but if I had hate in my heart, I would hate the Democrat Party because of what they do, what they are doing. And the people who have sold us out, who have sold out Black people, who have sold out America, doing this minstrel show. I mean, in some ways, I should thank you because you giving me purpose. You make it possible for me to say, I am going to stay in the arena because I cannot let this be unanswered. What the entire liberal left-wing Democrat philosophy and approach to very, very important issues, how that has been captured, weaponized, and how it works actually against what they claim that they want to accomplish in terms of equality and opportunity and all of that. It just makes me so upset. So let's put on the commercial. It's a very long commercial. And we're just going to brace ourselves. We are going to watch it because we have to know what we're facing. We have to know what we're up against.
Washington once again this week. She announced that she's going to resign from Congress on January 5th. Here to discuss.
It's not an accident that they're juxtaposing MTG and this woman.
Jasmine Crockett of Texas. Congresswoman, thanks so much for joining us. I want to start with the shocking announcement from Congresswoman Green. What went through your mind when you first heard she was going to resign on January 5th?
You know what? Honestly, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. You're on the other side of the president for 1 week and you can't take the heat. Imagine what it is to sit in my shoes, to not only be on the opposite side of him, but to have people like her who are—
It's about Jasmine.
The flames of hate. And imagine what those threats look like when you literally are someone like me. But at the end of the day, I know that I serve the people of Texas 30. And so my isn't to be there and necessarily do whatever is going to make the president not be on my back, but instead is to focus on making sure that I can push forward with policies that are positive for Texas 30.
Here's an excerpt from her resignation video. Take a listen.
Standing up for American women who were raped at 14 years old, trafficked and used by rich, powerful men should not result in me being called a traitor and threatened by the President of the United States, whom I fought for.
So she seems to be suggesting that it is their disagreement over the release of the Epstein files that is causing this shocking political breakup. What's your response to that?
I mean, listen, he's upset with Thomas Massey, and so he's gone after him. He's upset with Boebert. He's upset with any Republican that actually signed the discharge petition. But somehow they were able to weather the storm. So, this really speaks to the fact that Marjorie, who has been an instigator of a lot of this hate that we see as it relates to the MAGA movement, it's just interesting that I don't know if she really fully understood how bad she was making it for other people. And now that they're doing it to her, I just got to say, well, why is it that everyone else is able to stand and you can't?
The House Oversight Committee, which you are a member of, said Friday night that your committee is expanding its investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. Do you have any idea what this expanded investigation might include?
I do not at this point in time. I'll say leadership is keeping it under wraps to make sure that we can hopefully not have many more obstacles. If you'll remember, we decided that we were going to put out a subpoena for Ghislaine Maxwell, and the next thing you know, the president's henchman showed up to her cell, and the next thing you know, we didn't have our sit-down talk with her, which I imagine would have gone a little differently if we had. So we're keeping that tight-lipped for now. The
chairman of the Oversight Committee, James Comer of Kentucky, says the Democrats are just trying to use these files to smear the president. Just to be clear, do you or your colleagues have any idea about what's in these files, one way or the other, relating to Trump or not?
Absolutely not. I mean, here's the reality. If we did have that information, I don't know that we would need it necessarily to be released. And we know that the Republicans keep saying, figure out what it is the Democrats have done and make sure that you can pull out the Democratic stuff and make sure you get rid of all the Republican names. Listen, I don't really care who is in the files. At the end of the day, right is right, wrong is wrong. And if you are truly about law and order, then we should be looking for who it is that has broken the law and in what ways. And we need to better understand who potentially in government allowed for a lot of these things to take place, whether we're talking about the fake immigration paperwork that we've heard from a lot of the survivors, whether we're talking about other foreign governments that have participated and who it was that allowed for that, whether we're talking about the sham organizations, the sham modeling agencies that were nothing but a front for trafficking. We need to know whether or not they still exist in some other iteration. This is about not only making sure that the survivors get justice, but making sure that there aren't others that are going through a similar system right now.
There was a back and forth this week after you accused former Republican Congressman, now EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin of campaign donations for Jeffrey Epstein. It turned out it wasn't convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. It was a Long Island neurosurgeon, Dr. Jeffrey Epstein, different person. You corrected the record. However, now the neurosurgeon is telling the New York Post that he is threatening revenge against you. He's going to donate to your campaign, so you have to admit you accepted money from a Jeffrey Epstein.
That is so stupid.
What's your response to that?
Listen, if there's anybody else who's alive and decides that they want to donate just so that you'll be on my FEC report, I am here for it. I will take your donation, especially since Jeffrey Epstein is now deceased. I don't think that it will be confusing whatsoever that it was not him, unless he's come back from the dead. So we'll see.
So
Is he dead? Is he dead? Is he in witness protection? What do you guys think? He didn't suicide himself, but is he even dead?
Although it's unclear, will survive a Republican primary. You said you had a meeting this week with pollsters to discuss your chances. Did you have that meeting? And if so, how did it go? Are you still thinking about running?
I am still thinking about running. We did get our polling back. So we are moving on to the next phase to determine whether or not this is.
Please elect John D. in Massachusetts.
And the
Please.
infrastructure can be built out in the way that I see it being necessary to actually be able to win,
Please.
as well as we are continuing to look at the polling on the other side. Listen, they are in a civil war right now on the Republican side as it relates to who will become their nominee.
Democrats in a civil war, worse than Republicans.
For decades at this point in time in some capacity. And right now, you know, I don't.
Maybe
know
not
if
worse.
he's enough to make it through his primary.
Jump ball, like I said last week. It's a jump ball. Everyone's in a glass house.
Like to put together a team, and we will make a final decision by Thanksgiving on whether or not we're gonna ultimately move forward.
What did the polling information that you got back show? I mean, is it a calculation of whether or not you're going to be facing Cornyn, who might have more appeal to moderates in your state, centrists in your state, as opposed to a more MAGA candidate who potentially defeats Cornyn in the primary that you might, or any Democrat might have a better chance against?
I'll tell you this, that head to head, we are doing really well against Paxton. I will say that. I will also tell you that we are actually within the margin of error as it relates to John Cornyn. So to be perfectly honest, the only reason that I'm continuing to consider whether or not I do this is because my polling says I can win. That is the bottom line. But at the end of the day, a poll is a poll. And so you need to actually be able to execute on that. So whether it's Cornyn or whether it's Paxton, we feel confident that we can get this done. The thing is, we obviously would prefer to have Paxton.
Right. It'll be easier to beat. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great Thanksgiving with your family.
Same to you.
Next on State of the Union, healthcare.
Okay.
Skyrocket.
I could do that Jasmine Crockett. That version of Jasmine Crockett, sort of just serious, straight. There wasn't the kind of theatrics. I'll just use that word, theatrics. So, all right. I like that last part. I was not aware of her being, exploring a run for the Senate. And, I'm thinking a lot about Senate races right now and what we're going to see on the Democrat side, particularly in Massachusetts, where, as I said at the beginning, when we first sort of set up, how watching the American Revolution yesterday, got through half of it, first 3 episodes, just really brought me back to my own upbringing in Boston and the history that I was taught every single day for like at least 3 years, at least from, I think it was 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, especially were the prime years. I think in upper school, once I got to high school, the curriculum, we got to be able to choose more of what we would take in terms of history and certain things. So I think it was really those years from like the age 11, 12, 13 in Boston, colonial history, all the gritty details of what led up to the American Revolution. And I hated it at the time. And now I just feel really grateful that was my upbringing. And it is really animating everything that I do. And I think also importantly, my capacity to think outside of the box, outside of boxes that other people would like me to be in. And this applies for all of us, this capacity to see through and beyond and outside of the box that you're supposed to stay inside of because of any particular reason. So the intersectionality right now of experience, of histories, of identity, of perspective, we have to seek that out. We have to seek that out because if we do not, we will not have another 250 years of this American experiment to celebrate. And there's a lot of things that I say and that are part of Kianga Ellis Projects, Friends of Kianga Ellis Projects Association, the Rural Rapid Response Network, this on-chain crypto native approach to organizing and communicating and financing our grassroots activities. But why even bother? Why even bother? Why am I bothering? It actually all goes back to this deep love, this deep connection that I have to this nation that is my, that birthed me, and the many people. I found watching the documentary so meaningful to try and put myself in those years, in that time, and think of how far we have fallen from what they hoped for, what they were willing to suffer through. And how are we doing on commercials? Okay. I saw a lot of people are super triggered and want to call this like woke and dismiss the documentary as not legitimate or not factual. But it's going to be necessary for all of us to embrace the full story, right? Okay, let's see what's next.
Instructed the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to change on its website the subject of vaccines and autism this week to something highly disputed by the scientific and medical community. It now reads, quote, "The statement vaccines do not cause autism is not an evidence-based claim. Scientific studies have not ruled out the possibility that infant vaccines contribute to the development of autism," end quote. Again, just to be crystal clear, experts say that those statements are false. The American Medical Association posted Friday, quote, "Despite recent changes to the CDC,
we don't believe anything that anybody's stating on TV, do we? No, we don't. Because they lie.
That vaccines are safe and effective," end quote. Joining us now to discuss, Republican Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana. He's the chairman of the Senate Health Committee's medical doctor. Dr. Cassidy, I know you want to talk about your healthcare proposal, and I promise you we will get to it, but I do want to ask you, because RFK Jr. promised you that he wouldn't do this. Here is an exchange you had with him during this confirmation hearing.
If the data is brought to you, and these studies that have been out there for quite some time and have been peer reviewed, and it shows that these two vaccines are not associated with autism, will you ask, no, I need even more? Or will you say, no, this, I see this, it's to the test of time, and I unequivocally and without qualification say that this does not cause autism?
Not only will I do that, I'll apologize for any statements that misled people otherwise.
Thank you.
Dr. Cassidy, he lied to you.
Well, first, let me say what is most important to the American people. Speaking as a physician, vaccines are safe. As has been pointed out, it's actually not disputed. It's actually quite well proven that vaccines are not associated with autism. There's a fringe out there that thinks so, but they're quite a fringe. President Trump agrees that vaccines are safe. And if you look at,
I don't know.
Taking vaccine,
neither do you, most likely. You really don't. Have you read the science? Have you read the science? Have you read the science? Are you a scientist? I'm not, and I haven't read the science, so I don't know.
So discuss this with your doctor. Vaccines are safe. That's the most important message.
Earlier this year, you started alarm about those two unvaccinated children in Texas who died. And obviously measles is a vaccine preventable illness. How worried are you that this change to the CDC's website and Secretary Kennedy's other actions are going to result in more dead Americans?
Anything that undermines the understanding, the correct understanding, the absolute scientifically based understanding that vaccines are safe, and that if you don't take them, you're putting your child or yourself in greater danger. Anything that underlines that message is a problem. And so I want to make America healthy again. I agree with President Trump, vaccines are safe. And so I just encourage everybody, if you've got a question, discuss with your physician. I will say, Jake, I've never met any parent who wasn't a pediatrician as well, who actually reads the CDC website. So the most important thing is discuss it with your child's physician or your physician. Vaccines are safe, they're indicated, Please get vaccinated, protect yourself, make your family healthy.
You were the deciding vote that allowed RFK Jr. to ascend to the role of health secretary. Here is how you explained that vote on the Senate floor.
It confirmed he will maintain the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices recommendations without changes. CDC will not remove statements on their website pointing out that vaccines do not cause autism.
So you just said that you've never met anybody other than pediatricians who read the CDC website, but back then you were talking about the importance of the CDC website. Watching this, did you give RFK Jr. too much credit? What are you going to do now to push back against this?
Well, first, I'm not minimizing these changes. They are important because you need to send the consistent signal that vaccines are safe. I'll just say that. And again, President Trump agrees that vaccines are safe and important, and that should not be undermined. If you, as we both know, there's an asterisk associated with that change on the website. The asterisk reflects the conversation he and I had, but I'll leave it at that. The fact is, the scientific community agrees that vaccines are safe. Talk to your physician. Keep your family safe. Don't be misled. And don't let your child be one of those who dies who wouldn't have died had your child been vaccinated. That's all I can say. Speaking of the physician as a parent and a grandparent, there are things more important than ideology. There's things that are important as your child's health. Get your child vaccinated.
As you know, this goes way beyond just vaccinations. A member of the Kennedy family this weekend, Tatiana Schlossberg, JFK's granddaughter, she has a moving essay in the New Yorker about her fatal cancer diagnosis. And in it she writes, quote, "As I spent more and more of my life under the care of doctors, nurses, and researchers striving to improve the lives of others, I watched as Bobby," that's a reference to RFK Jr., "cut nearly $500 million for research into mRNA vaccines, technology that can be used against certain cancers. He slashed billions in funding from the NIH." And she goes on and on and on. RFK Jr., according to his own family, is causing real damage to the health of the United States of America. You don't seem willing to criticize him by name at all, unlike members of his family.
So, Jake, clearly, this conversation, you want me to be on the record saying something negative. And of course, it makes news if Republicans fight each other. I get that.
I don't even know that he's a
I'm
Republican.
rather focusing upon, or whatever. But
The administration, Jake, come on.
I'm all about how do we make America healthy. And I speak as a
He is
physician.
the worst.
And
Dana
I don't
is
think
much
it's
better
what
to
people
take.
are about. I don't think the inside the beltway, oh, he said, she said, he said, he said. I think what's important, Jake, and what we should be focused on right now is how do we make America healthy? You mentioned healthcare costs. Right now, some insurance policies are so expensive that people cannot afford the deductible, so they don't get the needed care. That actually has more of an impact upon making people healthy than the New Yorker essay, which is a good essay, I understand. I'm not minimizing. But if we're actually going to speak about what's important to the American people, get vaccinated, discuss with your physician, but also how do we help it so you can afford the health care? And so Jake, I know it's titillating, but I think we need to move beyond the titillation into actually what matters to the American people.
I'm going to turn to your healthcare plan because I really want to talk about it, but I'll just say this isn't about titillation. This is about the fact that you are the chairman of the health committee and you voted to confirm somebody that, by all accounts from the medical and scientific community and his own family, including his dying cousin, this health secretary is actually making America less healthy when it comes to vaccines and studies. But let's turn to your new healthcare plan because I know you really want to talk about it. You're proposing this change to Obamacare subsidies. You want the premium tax credits to be converted into federal contributions.
I know you really want to talk about it. Not that we want to hear about it, because we do.
So that Americans can use this for out-of-pocket healthcare costs. There are right now millions of Americans who are about to lose health insurance in weeks when these Obamacare subsidies expire. Is there anything in your plan that will stop that?
Absolutely. If you take the same amount of money that under the extended, there's two types of Obamacare subsidies. There's the baseline, we're not touching that. There's the other, which are called the enhanced, started under the Biden administration because Obamacare policies have become so expensive, they have to subsidize the subsidy. what we would do is take the enhanced premium tax credits and we'd still make sure that patients don't pay too much as a percent of their income for the insurance. But we would take the extra amount that's available and put it into a health savings account. Now the person, when they have a policy with a $5,000 deductible, has $1,000 or $2,000 in their health savings account to help pay for that. And the way we afford it, when you give money to insurance companies, 20% of that goes for profit and overhead. That's under the Obamacare law. 20% goes for profit and overhead. And by the way, they have to give you permission to get the care that you know you need. Under our plan, 100% goes to take care of patients. It goes all to the patient, and they don't have to seek permission. They can use all that money for the care they know they need. It gives power to the patient. So yes, we're working on it. Yes, we can do it. And yes, I think we can get ready for 2026.
Several Republicans are also pitching different healthcare plans of their own, including Florida Republican Senator Rick Scott. Have you gotten buy-in from other Republicans in the Senate for your plan? Have you spoken with President Trump about it?
So Rick Scott's plan is more for 2027.
The contempt in Jake's eyes is so palpable, isn't it? Is this journalism where their faces are dripping with hatred? I don't think that's journalism that any of us should trust. I mean, that goes for both sides of the media, all angles of the media, right? Independent, I mean, just understand people are talking their book. And then, okay, just don't pretend that you're neutral. Don't pretend that you're the unbiased facts when then you drip with contempt. That's very partisan, or that has an agenda behind it. It's meant to signal to the audience, I should not like this person. So there's a lot of games being played here.
Before America spirals into an even worse healthcare crisis that it's already in.
So, yeah, Henry Ford once said, whether you say you can or you say you can't, you're always right. And by the way, a lot of the legal framework of what we hope to do is already in place. What we're really talking about is about Americans still being on the exchange, but choosing a bronze plan instead of a silver plan. And the metal levels you can look up, but bronze plans tend to be less expensive. Why? Because they have a higher deductible. But wait, we're going to give people money in their health savings account that pay for that deductible. So on that, the cost of being insured is less. The cost of the premium plus the cost of your deductible would be less under our plan than under the status quo. And did I say, power to the patient? You can get the health care that you know you need, as opposed to the health care that the insurance company gives you permission to get. So we think it's a better plan, power to the patient, not profits to the insurance company. And I think it can be ready.
All right, still to come. Thank you so much.
All right.
Chairman and Dr. Cassidy, really appreciate it. Hope you have a lovely Thanksgiving with your family.
You too, Jay.
Still to come. What's Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene after her signing resignation announcement? Is 2028 calling? My panel will discuss.
All right, the panels are so missable. I want to try something. I'm watching this also on my phone, and it just looks like a terrible quality photo. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, my office is, I'm in Albany. I'm downtown Albany. I'm in the Capital District. This is the best internet connection that there is. Maybe I should try, what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually see if me connecting to the Wi-Fi, I thought that it would be better being plugged in, but let me see. So this might, the stream might interrupt, so just bear with me. Bear with me. All right, let's see if that's better. Like I said this morning earlier, this is not a professional operation. This is, you see all the sausage made. It's just open kimono. It's just me, it's Kianga, just pressing go live. And all right, I see that the stream has frozen. Let's wait. Let's wait. I have the audio. Let's wait. I'm going to refresh. I have the audio. Let's wait. Okay. I hope this is better. Oh my God, that's so much better. Why is the Wi-Fi a better signal than being plugged in on the wire? I don't know. Okay, that is so much better. So good. All right, where are we? It is 9:42 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm Kianga Ellis. Welcome, GM, everybody joining live the KEP, Kianga Ellis Projects Sunday Shows Watch Party, where this is the second week we're doing this. I think we should do this every week. I want you to share in my suffering of what I do on Sunday mornings as I just binge watch the Sunday shows because I want to see the propaganda. I want to see what the mainstream, how they are framing things for us. We know that we have to really have a very critical and skeptical eye when we watch this. And we need to make sure we have some distance between what is being said and what we just believe, right? I know I don't have to say, anybody who's watching this right now, I know I don't have to tell you this. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir, right? So that's what this is. And we are going to just hang out here and we're going to finish watching State of the Union. The panels are really less interesting. I really like the Sunday shows because you get to hear from the officials, and the thing is, many of us are not watching these shows, obviously, but they are all watching these shows. Okay, hang on.
After he hatefully dumped tens of millions of dollars against me and tried to destroy me.
One time I'm sick of you guys because she would never survive the primary. But I think she's a nice person.
What a mysterious and bewildering breakup. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene explaining why she's leaving Congress January 5th, directing much of the blame to President Trump. My panel's here to discuss. Congresswoman Albrecht, that's your colleague, announcing that she's stepping down, seemingly blaming most of it on Trump and seemingly blaming it on the breakup over the Epstein files.
Yeah, listen, she did the right thing this week, unequivocally signing that discharge petition, releasing the Epstein files.
Was that this week?
I know. Yeah. It's a long week. And she's right on healthcare affordability. Now, she's welcome to sign that discharge petition and actually get the ball moving on ACA subsidies. But she's also contributed to the chaos that is the institution. And between her and a couple other actors, I mean, this week in particular, it just felt like we were a reality TV show. Andy Cohen might as well be producing us
Just this week,
and we all
every
have
day.
to turn this ship
It
around.
is the Truman Show. We know this now.
Culture, I want you to listen to what Congressman Ro Khanna said in reaction to her stepping down.
She probably has more populist instincts than J.D. Vance, who's the front runner on the Republican side. It would not surprise me if she runs in 2028. And I actually think she's more in touch with some of the populism that fueled Donald Trump's rise than Trump and Vance are these days.
No, I don't know how much our friend Rokana is being a mischief maker. What do you think?
I absolutely don't see that.
Accurate. Rokana is accurate.
Georgia, that's unrealistic to me. I think the president's new posture against her makes that very difficult for MAGA-leaning Republicans in the states. And then the second question becomes, well, could she run as a more traditional conservative, contextually speaking, someone like a Kemp? Well, those Republicans absolutely dislike Marjorie Taylor Greene. So I'm thinking there's some other opportunity, perhaps in the media ecosystem, that she's looking at. But I think her future life in politics is over. Jay.
What do you think about the speculation?
He doesn't have a clue.
She's doing whatever it takes to make money. I mean, Marjorie's pension does not vest until January the 4th. So she's resigning on January the 5th.
What? Where did this talking point come from? It's such BS. The woman is independently financially fine.
Majority still 218.
That's all they have against her is her pension vest. Why shouldn't she take her pension? For whatever reason, she earned it. Why is that nefarious?
I totally agree. I think we're going to hear the announcement of the take with Marjorie Taylor Greene or what have you at some point in the next few months. That feels like realistically the next place for her. And I'm just going to say the same thing. She's trying to make life as hard as possible for congressional Republicans moving forward. There's obviously a lot of personal grievance with Trump, and she's certainly, I think, done admirable, not just admirable, but important work in holding Trump's feet to the fire, keeping congressional Republicans moving forward on forcing the Epstein disclosure. So I can certainly acknowledge that for her. But I also think this is emblematic of the larger trajectory of the MAGA movement. Trump is starting to enter slowly a lame duck period. And you're seeing divisions, not just on the Epstein issue, you're seeing it on questions around Israel, you're seeing it around questions of healthcare subsidies, American assistance overseas. These questions are only going to continue to foment, and it's going to be a challenge for him to continue to have the same iron grip that he's had on the Republican caucus.
Well, the portion of the so-called Republican Party that's anti-Israel and pro-welfare can leave. And if Marjorie Taylor's going to start that exodus, that's fine with most of us.
You know, what's interesting about this is like previously the Republicans, the president.
Anti-Israeli government. I think just that word was missing, just to be precise. I mean, I think that's just saying, I think that's really what that's about, the government.
Jeff Flake, Bob Corker. This is the first, and maybe I'm wrong, but as far as I can remember, this is the first like MAGA Republican that he is essentially chasing.
Well, and it's because of her posture on the Epstein files, which the president, by the way, ultimately did sign. So at some point, I presume the American people will know what's there. I think this is a bit of political posture for Democrats. They had an opportunity, 2021, 2022, where they controlled the House.
He's a Republican strategist. Why is he clueless?
Is at the feet of Republicans, what they're attempting to blame the president on. And despite the president's criticism of Marjorie Taylor Greene, think about someone like Thomas Massey, the president has criticized significantly. Massey appears to be raising a lot of money. I'm not exactly sure, Brad, if he'll lose that race. We'll see. But I bring it up as an example to say that if she did not decide to step away from Congress, she probably would have won her reelection from some of the local polling I've seen.
Yeah. Let's turn to another subject that also has to do with your college.
I mean, but did he hear what she said about that? That she doesn't want to take her district through what it would take for her to win? I mean, there's a lot going on that is, of course, not going to be said. So we can dissect what has been said. I just wish some of these talking heads would deal with the fullness of people's statements. Instead, they just cherry pick an angle that if they had more integrity, we could have a better dialogue on so many topics if they would just deal with what she actually, the fullness of what she said about that. But no one's interested in doing that, right? I mean, everyone is interested in their own position. I always use this trading language of like, they talk their book. And that's all we have now. We have everybody talking their book. So that's why I don't like watching the panel, but you were going to suffer through more of this with me because misery loves company.
Military troops are trained to know what to do if they're given an act that is illegal. They will not follow it. Why did they do this? Because they were hoping that the president would respond the way he did. Thankfully, he cleaned it up, but there's no political gains out of this.
Can I just say, we have a phrase, a kick dog hollers, and the president's response here indicates that he's a kick job. And I think the fact that he's gone to this in moment of incredible political heightened intensity in this country to go immediately to this should be punishable by death is an incredibly dangerous thing.
This is highly irresponsible by these Democrats. They are trying to shred the chain of command. No one's giving illegal orders, and every soldier knows they don't have to obey them. This was a dangerous, irresponsible move.
So
Yep.
happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Have a wonderful time with your family. Much more to come on this Sunday morning, including 2 more surprise announcements from the nation's capital.
Much more to come. Oh my God, what could it be? 2 surprise announcements. Oh, Jake. Wow. Okay, so let's unpack that last segment. I don't have a lot to say about the whole vaccine thing. So I'm going to skip that. I'm not going to give in-depth hot takes on absolutely every single thing. Because a lot of, 90, I mean, really all, where did I put the book? Everything we're being fed, right? Everything that is coming to us through the screens is not real. We are in a simulation. The Matrix was a documentary. 1984 was a documentary. And so, we just can't chase every little ball of yarn. That's how we are. I'm speaking to myself too. I mean, if we're not careful, right? That's all of us. Every little piece of yarn, we're just little kittens, like. Meanwhile, what is happening over here? Like, what are the other things that are happening? Where are levers really being flipped that determine our circumstances and our future and what's really happening? What are we contributing to when we pay attention? Okay, so that's another good segue to one of the books in the bibliography. So for people just joining the stream, welcome GM to Kianga Ellis Projects Sunday Shows Watch Party. Before we started in this sort of pre of this live stream, I explained that I have spent the morning pulling books from shelves, totally inspired from watching the American Revolution, reflecting on my own origin story, the origin story of America, and then the origin story of Kianga Ellis Projects, and this decision over the past year to expand my focus from just kind of supporting the arts and the things that I've done for the past 20 years. And really make citizen adjacent action the umbrella, a new civics, a new vision for how we need to redo, revamp, reimagine, regenerate, revive, just do over how we're gonna be in this nation. And so I pulled all these books that have been part of my life, that have shaped my thinking, that are responsive to my questions as I've grown up, as in my adulthood. And many of I've read, some I haven't, some are newer books that I'm looking forward to reading. Some I really want to read again. But on this topic of where we put our attention, hang on, I think. I've got 30 books stacked here. It just started with one book. It just started with me this morning thinking about, the revolution and how it was taught to me as a girl in Boston, and what I think about it now. All right, I'm gonna keep him muted. Hang on. Let's see. Oh, okay. Let's see about the babies. That's cute.
Boy, he weighed 5 pounds, 11 ounces, 15 inches long. And just hours later, our supervising producer, Greg Hughes, and his wife, Molly, welcomed their baby girl, Hazel Patricia Hughes. She weighed 7 pounds, 14 ounces, and was 20.5 inches long. We're sending all of our love and support to Rachel and Greg as they soak up this special time. Look at those faces, special time with their family. We can't wait to meet these adorable new babies. Congratulations, guys. We love you. Thank you for spending your Sunday morning with us. Free Sakari GPS starts next.
That right there, that's what it's all about. See, that warmed my heart. I mean, that was all of us. That was you. How often do you think about that? Do you think about that you were once like the size of a raisin? Oh, okay. I was talking about attention, and I was commenting on all of this, everything that we're watching. We're gonna have fun. We're gonna talk smack about the Sunday shows. We get feisty on the internets, and all of that has its place. But there's some very serious things to consider when it comes to where we are looking, what we are consuming, and where we focus. And there's a couple of books in the bibliography that really deal with that. And here's one of them, although this is fascinating look at parallel visions in space, time, and light. I'll just read a little snippet of it. Art interprets the visible world. Physics charts its unseen workings, making these two realms seem in complete opposition. But in art and physics, Leonard Shlain tracks their development side by side throughout the centuries to reveal an astonishing correlation of visions. From the classical Greek sculptors to Andy Warhol and Jasper Johns, from Aristotle to Einstein, artists have often foreshadowed the theories and discoveries of scientists. In this lively, colorful narrative, Leonard Shlain explores how major artistic breakthroughs have prefigured the visionary insights of physics throughout history. I read this book around 2009. I want to reread it. I want to reread all of these books. Like, do I have an extra, 4 years to you guys just leave me alone. I'm going to be in my little corner just reading. So that's an important book, but that isn't the one. Okay, this one, which I'm actually it looks like I possibly only read 37 pages. Anyway, around to the year right after I was in Lehman Brothers. I was a lawyer inside of Lehman Brothers when it collapsed in 2008, and the whole thing is extremely traumatizing for many, many reasons. And I took a sabbatical from my law career for a number of years, and that corresponded with a bunch of stuff that I did in the arts and very much online. 2009, 10. And part of my journey at that time was learning about quantum physics. I'm sure I touched on it in school, although I don't remember. I did take physics in high school, but I'm pretty sure that I never had kind of come across quantum physics, which I did go to a very advanced school in Boston, I mean, in terms of the curriculum was very strong. So I don't know that you get into quantum, although they probably do now. I don't know that we got into quantum physics. I was more English focused and political science major and English minor in college. So I didn't, as much as I love science, I didn't really study a ton about it. So it was around the year 2000. Hang on, where are we in terms of time? Okay, I have to put a pin in that. We've got to get to Beat the Press. Beat the Press. Okay, to be continued.
Joins the Epstein files. Concerns grow over the economy, and the White House rolls back tariffs on dozens of food products.
The thing that I ask for the American people is a little bit of patience.
I'll talk to Treasury Secretary.
Are you patient? Do you have any more patience? I don't have any more patience. I'm out of patience, JD.
After they encouraged U.S. service members to refuse illegal orders.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
State of the Union was a bit dry. It was a bit dry. It was a bit weak. This is the main show, right? This is the show that's been going on for. This is the show that's been going on for decades. This is the show that I've watched my entire life. Meet the Press. So the other ones are kind of, just throwaway as far as I'm concerned. This is the main event.
For insight and analysis, NBC News senior Washington correspondent Hallie Jackson, Jonathan Martin of Politico, Republican strategist Sarah Fagan, and former Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson. Welcome to Sunday. It's Meet the
But there's no officials. It's just the panel. All right, we're gonna watch it anyway, right? That's why we're here.
Good Sunday morning. After months of trading barbs throughout the New York City mayoral campaign, President Donald Trump and Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani finally met face-to-face in the Oval Office this week in a stunning turnaround. Mr. Trump, a native New Yorker, emphasizing what he has in common with the 34-year-old Democratic socialist.
We had some interesting.
I have avoided watching any clips from this. Something about it, and I do, and I'm going to skip this because you guys have probably seen these clips. Let's see what she's saying.
Coming up in just a moment. It all comes amid a renewed focus on affordability nationwide, with the Trump administration rolling back tariffs on over 200 food products and defending their economic policies.
We're also making incredible strides to make America affordable again. That's a new word that they're using, affordability.
Even though we've made incredible progress, we understand that there's a lot more work to do. And the thing that I'd ask for the American people is a little bit of patience.
And joining me now is Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Secretary Bessent, welcome back to Meet the Press.
It's good to be with you today.
It's great to have you here in person. Thank you for being here. I want to start right there on the discussion of affordability. You just heard Vice President J.D. Vance ask people to have, quote, a little bit of patience with the administration. Let me ask you, Mr. Secretary, how long do Americans need to be patient? How long do they have to wait for the cost of living to come down?
Well, Kristen, in March of 2024, I wrote a piece and I talked about the 3 I's that were killing Americans: immigration, interest rates, and inflation. President's closed the border and the mass immigration is gone. And that was putting, a lot of the immigration was putting upward pressure on housing, downward pressure on wages. Interest rates are down. And now we are starting to see the affordability. The prices get better. We had a very big October for home sales. Energy prices, gasoline is down. We saw, we believe healthcare is going to come down. We will see an announcement this coming week on that. And so across the board, prices are starting to come down. We're having Thanksgiving week. This will be the lowest cost for Thanksgiving dinner in 4 years. Turkey prices are down 16%.
And yet some prices are going up. Of course, we have seen prices increasing on staples like coffee, bananas, bacon. Inflation has gone up. It's at 3% now, up from 2% in April when the tariffs were imposed.
No, they weren't. So inflation hasn't gone up. And Kristen, the one thing that we're not going to do is do what the Biden administration did and tell the American people they don't know how they feel. They are traumatized, and over the Biden inflation, we have slowed inflation, and we are working very hard to bring it
We
down.
don't care what name you put on it.
The Council on
I don't care if you call it
Economic
Biden
Study. You know, the best
or
way to
Trump.
bring your inflation rate down, move from a blue state to a
It
red
doesn't
state.
change how it
Blue
feels.
state inflation is 0.5% higher, and that is because they don't deregulate, they keep prices up, energy is higher.
Just according to the consumer prices, inflation was at 2.3% back in April, in September 3%. But let me ask you about tariffs, because there's a big announcement on tariffs. Since you were last on this program, the administration announced it was rolling back tariffs on more than 200 food products. You have said recently that you think tariffs help consumers. If tariffs help consumers, why is the administration rolling them back?
Well, first of all, Chris, if you look at the data, the imported goods, the inflation has actually been flat. Inflation is up because of the service economy and services, so that has nothing to do with tariffs. And many of the food items where the inflation is coming down, the USTR has been working very hard on trade deals, and the trade deals that have been in the works for 6 or 8 months coincide with many Latin American, Central American countries where the foodstuffs you just named come from.
Well, and banana prices are up almost 7%, coffee prices up nearly 19%. Isn't the fact that you're rolling back tariffs an admission that ultimately they do drive up prices for consumers?
Chris, how much did your arm weigh?
I do know that.
Exactly, but you know how much you weigh. You get on the scale every morning. Inflation is a composite number, and we look at everything. So we try to push down the things we can control. And as I said, that we are working on the energy prices are down, and everything flows from that. And I think we're going to see these other prices come down. And again, many of these goods were part of trade deals with countries that have been in the works for months.
Sure, very quickly come down in a matter of weeks, months.
Sorry?
Weeks or months. Prices will come down in weeks or months.
Some are going to come down in weeks, some are going to come down in months. We just had in terms of affordability, we just had the best month in the housing market due to affordability, due to increased supply in October, best October in 3 years, best month since February.
Let me ask you big picture, Mr. Secretary. You said earlier this month, I'm going to quote you, quote, I think there are sectors of the economy that are in a recession. Kevin Hassett, director of the National Economic Council, said, quote, we're starting to see pockets of the economy that look like they might be in a recession. Which parts of the economy do you believe have tipped into a recession?
Well, clearly housing has been struggling, and so interest rate sensitive sectors have been in a recession. And the other thing that was not helpful, Kristen, was the longest government shutdown in history. It was 1.5% hit to GDP. They had 9,500 flights canceled, and the Democrats didn't care that they hurt the American economy and anything to stop Donald Trump.
Well, big picture, is the country at risk, the entire country at risk of being in a recession?
No, I am very confident about 2026, but what we are going to see is the president has done peace deals, tax deals, and trade deals, but one big beautiful bill. And to go back to affordability has two components. So it's price of goods and real incomes. So under the one big beautiful bill, especially for working Americans, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, auto deductibility and loans for American cars. That's all kicking in. Americans have not changed their withholding, so we're going to see substantial refunds to working families in the first quarter of 2026. Americans will change their withholding, and they will get an increase in real income. The trade deals that we've done, I was just at my hometown, Charleston, South Carolina, Boeing is expanding their Dreamliner plant, 1,000 new jobs, and I think we're going to see these plant openings every week. I am very, very optimistic on 2026. We have set the table for a very strong, non-inflationary growth economy.
Okay, let me ask you about the big news on the world stage. You just talked about the president's peace deals. Let's talk about Ukraine. U.S. lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, Ukrainian officials who I've spoken to, say the peace plan for Russia and Ukraine, as written, only benefits Russia. Let me ask you simply, Mr. Secretary, was this 28-point plan written by Russia?
I have no information on that, Kristen, but I can tell you, I am the highest ranking U.S. official to have visited Ukraine. I went last February. And when I went last February, I went with an economic cooperation agreement between the U.S. and Ukraine. President Zelensky pushed back against it. The same people you're just talking about there pushed back against it. Mainstream media pushed back against it. You know what? We did it 3 months later, and now it is the centerpiece for the Ukrainian economy. That this agreement is even funding military plans for the very innovative military sector in the Ukraine. So, I would be very careful on conventional wisdom. And to go back to your question, it is a peace negotiation.
Well, okay, to that point, Republican Senator Mike Brown, who was briefed by Secretary Rubio, came out and he said this, quote, "It's not our peace plan. It looks more like it was written in Russian to begin with." Secretary Rubio says the U.S. did write the plan, but regardless of who wrote it, U.S. lawmakers are concerned that it benefits Russia over Ukraine. Is the administration, is President Trump planning to pressure Ukraine to accept this deal?
Look, at the end of the day, it's going to be a decision with the Ukrainians. President Trump is a president of peace. This war would not have started. There was no Ukrainian territory taken anytime that he's been in office. Everything else, Crimea and this vote have been when President Trump wasn't there. President Trump has put more pressure on the Russian Federation with economic sanctions. The laggards here are the Europeans. The Europeans tell me, oh, we are doing our 19th sanctions package. In my mind, Kristen, if you're going to do something 19 times, you failed. Instead, President Trump moved forward with a bold initiative that the Europeans would not follow us on. He put a 25% tariff on India because they were buying Russian oil. The Russian oil going in to the Indian refineries, guess who was buying that? The Europeans. They're funding the war on themselves. President Trump, 2 weeks ago, sanctioned Rosneft and Lukoil.
He's so much better talking about this, right? And he like woke up when he got to this part. He was stumbling through all of that inflation stuff. I mean, he was having a hard time answering, but now he's awake.
But I am confident that the peace process is moving forward.
Okay, let me ask you about another topic. This week, they got a lot of attention. 6 congressional Democrats released a video with a message to service members and intelligence officials. Take a look.
Constitution aren't just coming from abroad, but from right here in Congress. Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse
This is the
illegal
absolute worst thing
President
ever.
Trump accused these lawmakers of, quote, seditious behavior punishable by death. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said that every order President Trump gives is lawful. Are you confident that every order that President Trump gives is lawful, Mr. Secretary?
President, what I am confident of is that this was a display of gross negligence here. That there are 2.1 million service members, and you're probably going to say, oh, like off the rails representatives have gotten death threats. Well, what about the 2.1 million service members? They have put their lives at risk. There is one commander in chief, and when you step outside of the chain of command and try to create the noise and chaos that only helps our enemies.
Are you confident, though, Mr. Secretary, that every order that President Trump gives?
That's really not the point of why we have a problem with that video.
I am confident of that, and I am also confident that this was a complete mistake. They should retract it.
Okay, before I let you go, I have to ask you about your op-ed in the Washington Post this morning. A lot of folks going to wake up to that. You call for an end to the filibuster. In the past, Leader Thune has said that it's just not happening. There aren't the votes. Mr. Secretary, do you believe that you have enough votes, that the president has enough votes to get rid of the filibuster?
Well, we will see come January 30th, because that's the point of my editorial, is to put the Senate on notice that the Democrats kept the government shut down. And Ezra Klein in the New York Times took the mask off. He said this wasn't about healthcare. This was about stopping totalitarianism. The Democrats haven't been able to stop President Trump in the courts. They haven't been able to stop him in the media. So they had to harm the American people. 1.5% hit to GDP, $11 billion permanent hit. They don't care. So I believe that Senate Democrats, if Senate Democrats close the government again, that Senate Republicans should immediately abrogate the filibuster. You should ask Senator Klobuchar whether she will adhere to the filibuster and whether she will close the government again.
Just yes or no, though. Do you acknowledge at this point you don't have the votes right now to do that?
We will see. On January 3rd, we'll see this bad Democratic behavior.
All right, Secretary Besson, thank you so much for being here and for the robust conversation. We really appreciate it.
Good to see you.
Covered a lot of.
Okay, I had to go and get another book that's in the bibliography as we were talking about the filibuster. So Akil Reed Amar, a professor at the Yale Law School, has this book. It's very big. I have had this book for 2 years and I have not read that much of it. But this is we have to do this work, people. And this is what's going to be going on with Friends of Kianga Ellis Projects and just all of it. I don't know that I have the right views on the filibuster. I don't know about the tariffs. I don't know about, what else did she ask him about? Inflation. We have to become more informed. Oh, and that Democrat video. Yeah, not cool, people. Not cool. Another thing that watching the American Revolution yesterday, watching that documentary, putting ourselves in their shoes, understanding just how remarkable it is that the United States came to be, that this country formed, and we're so removed from the realities of conflict and war and military, and everything is theater, right? Everything is the spectacle, everything is a drama, it's a video game, it's not real. The lesson was learned in Vietnam politically, right? Like, let's not show them everything. Let's not show them what's going on. It's going to cause a political problem. And we very quickly stopped seeing coverage of the Ukraine conflict. I mean, very quickly. And then, the Gaza-Israeli conflict, that there was just like, journalists were absolutely killed. Like, there was you were not supposed to see, we were not supposed to see any of that. It is wrong for civilians. It is wrong for our elected representatives to insert themselves in that way to message to our military, period, full stop. If you have a problem with who is the president, if you have a problem with who is the commander-in-chief, then you have a problem with democracy. That's just a point that you can't have it both ways. You can't say that we have fascism and a tyrant and a king, and also say there's no election interference, and also say there's nothing wrong. I mean, this is why we don't spend a ton of time watching what is coming out of the screen. Oh, God, we got to watch this a little bit.
Into the cabinet room, and there we were looking at portraits of presidents of years gone by.
This is
We
a
admired that portrait of
this is a theater that I've had enough of right now. I'm not going to watch a lot of this, and I suggest that everyone be really skeptical at how this person has become such an international celebrity and why he was given a platform in the Oval Office. Like, why is this occurring?
As President Trump repeatedly threatened to cut off federal funding to New York if you won. The president seemed to back away from that yesterday, though, in his public comments in that joint news conference you all did. He said, I don't think that's going to happen. I expect to be helping him, not hurting him. Do you believe him when he said that?
No, I believe the president in the conversation that we had, and I will continue to make the case both to the president
Bibliography.
and to the country at large about the needs of New Yorkers. Because what I found, frankly, is that New Yorkers have grown tired of being asked to believe in a system that has delivered very little for them. They're tired of a politics that expects everything from them while delivering little. And what they want now is politics that can see the scale of the crisis in front of it and actually start to work together to deliver on it.
You ran a campaign, though, saying that President Trump had not delivered on his promise of affordability. Did anything that happened in that meeting make you think, yes, he can deliver on that promise for Americans, for New Yorkers?
Well, I spoke to the president about the fact that while our campaign technically began on October 23rd last year, for many people, they became aware of it after the president won his election. And when I went out and spoke to New Yorkers, asking them who did they vote for and why, in two neighborhoods that swung most significantly towards the president. This was Fordham Road in the Bronx, Hillside Avenue in Queens. And I shared with the president that when I asked those New Yorkers why did they vote for the president, they told me again and again it was cost of living, cost of living, cost of living. And when the president and I were speaking, we were speaking about what is preventing from delivering on that affordability agenda. Sometimes it's a lack of taking on the broken system that we have. And I spoke about in New York City, for example, zoning regulations. We spoke about ULURP. This is a process by which you either approve or deny zoning changes that are made in New York City. We spoke about the need to change so many of those situations such that a developer doesn't tell you the thing more expensive than labor or materials is waiting. And we also spoke about the importance of understanding what it is that hurts New Yorkers in their pockets. It's their rent, it's their childcare, it's their utilities, and it's their childcare. Because the childcare, I say twice, because it is the second highest cost after housing, $22,500 a year for a single child.
Well, let me ask you about the other threat that we heard from President Trump to send troops to New York City to address issues of crime and immigration. We've seen him do this in other major cities. Did you get any assurances in your meeting, Mayor-elect Mamdani, that President Trump will not send troops into New York?
Now, I told the president that the cornerstone of an affordability agenda is public safety, and that it is critically important to me. And for all that has been said and all that has been spoken about, and the tens of millions of dollars looking to make New Yorkers fearful of that question, the truth of it is, in fact, that I'm looking forward to working with the NYPD to deliver on that. And I shared with the president that my decision to retain Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch is in large part a recognition of the fact that in her time leading the NYPD, she has driven down crime across the 5 boroughs while starting to uproot corruption that was endemic in the top echelons of that department under Mayor Adams.
And I'm going to follow up with you on your decision to keep Commissioner Tisch, but to this core question that I think so many New Yorkers are curious to know the answer to. What did President Trump say to you? Did he assure you he will not send troops into New York?
He told me that he cared deeply about public safety. I said he cared deeply about the same.
Send troops?
What I told him is that what separates New York City from anywhere else in the country is we have the NYPD. And I trust the NYPD to deliver public safety. And to me, that is something that I know that they can do, that they have done, and they will continue to do under my leadership.
So he didn't rule it out in your meeting?
I made it very clear what we wanted to do was to deliver public safety and affordability. The NYPD would be the ones to do so.
In that press conference with President Trump, a reporter asked you whether you believe that President Trump is in fact a fascist, a word that you've used in the past. You were about to answer, then President Trump sort of jumped in and he said, quote, "That's okay, you can just say yes. It's easier than explaining it." So, Mr. Mayor-elect, just to be very clear, do you think that President Trump is a fascist?
And after President Trump said that, I said yes.
And
So you do.
and that's something that I've said in the past, I say it today, and I think what I appreciated about the conversation that I had with the president was that we were not shy about the places of disagreement about the politics that has brought us to this moment. And we also
The pot calls the kettle black, people.
shared analysis of the affordability crisis for New Yorkers.
You've also said in the past that President Trump has engaged in a quote attack on our democracy. You've called him a despot. Do you still believe President Trump is a threat to the democracy?
Everything that I've said in the past, I continue to believe. And that's the thing that I think is important in our politics, is that we don't shy away from where we have disagreements, but we understand what it is that brings us to that table. Because I'm not coming into the Oval Office to make a point or make a stand. I'm coming in there to deliver for New Yorkers. And a few weeks ago, I was asked by a reporter 3 words to describe myself. I said, New York City. And that's what animated that conversation. How do we deliver for the people of New York City?
You have said that you want to raise $9 billion.
He hates New York
in
City.
Taxes, increasing taxes on the wealthy, on businesses, in order to fund your key policies like universal child care, which you mentioned. You would need Governor Kathy Hochul to be on board with this. You need her signature. She has never publicly committed to increasing taxes. I know you just spoke with her. Mr. Mayor-elect, did Governor Hochul commit to you that she will support and sign on to your plan to increase taxes?
The governor and I had a productive conversation. What we both committed to is working together for the affordability agenda. And one thing I appreciate of the many about Governor Hochul is that she's been focused not just on affordability, but specifically on universal child care for quite some time. And now is the time to bring a partner forward in City Hall. And I've said plainly and openly that I believe that these are 2 tax proposals that make sense, increasing the personal income taxes on New Yorkers making $1 million or more by just 2%, increasing the top corporate tax rate to that match that of New Jersey. And what I've also said is more important than how we fund something is that we fund something. And if there are additional or alternate revenue streams to do so, I will accept them and I will celebrate them, because the most important thing is to actually deliver for the New Yorkers who right now can't even conceive of having a family in New York City because of how expensive we've made childcare across the board.
Well, and your entire agenda is incredibly ambitious: universal child care, free buses, among other things, lowering rent. Can you deliver on this agenda without Governor Hochul agreeing to increase taxes?
Well, I'm thankful that I'm not going to have to engage in the hypothetical, because I am confident of the 2 of us working together to deliver on this agenda and ensure that finally, and this goes back to just that portrait of FDR, we look at what politics has been in the past. It has been there in the moments of such transformation, meeting the scale of the crisis. We can do that again.
So just yes or no, you think she'll raise taxes?
I think she'll work with me to deliver on affordability. I think raising taxes make the most sense. If there's any alternative that raises the same amount of money, I'm open.
All right, let's talk about another major issue, which you referenced, policing.
So many major.
Crime, there are a lot of major issues, I know. 5 years ago, you were calling for defunding the police. Now you are in charge of the largest police department in the country. You have tapped Commissioner Jessica Tisch to stay on in her job. She has accepted. She wants to put thousands more police officers on the streets of New York. Will you do that, Mr. Mayor-elect?
I've said over the course of the campaign that I think the number we've had budgeted of 35,000 officers is a sufficient number. What we have to do, however, is allow those officers to focus on policing. And what I mean by that is that in 2020, the response time for the NYPD was less than 11 minutes. Today, it's closer to 16 minutes. Large part of that is because officers are now having to deal with 200,000 mental health calls a year. And so our proposal is create a Department of Community Safety, task it with the mental health crisis, the homelessness crisis, and allow officers to focus on serious crimes so we can get back to the work of delivering on this, as opposed to being trapped in a political discourse without addressing the systemic
But
crisis.
you know, violent crime is substantially down under Commissioner Tisch's watch. Do you acknowledge that her approach
Is it?
working, and therefore do you need to listen to her when she says, I need more cops on the street?
Is it
The
really?
decision to retain Commissioner Tisch is because of the importance of outcomes. The fact that she has been able to deliver on rooting out corruption while lowering crime is something to be celebrated. And I think the commissioner and I have been very clear that what brings us together is a shared importance of public safety. I think we can do that with the officers we have.
Would you rule out putting more police officers on the street?
What I will tell you is that the 35,000 we have budgeted, that's the amount that I think we need.
Okay. Let me ask you, again, just going back to that press conference with President Trump, as reporters were leaving, you were answering a question that I think was hard for a lot of people to hear about your response to protests outside of a Manhattan synagogue. Your initial response to that incident did receive some criticism, as you know. What is your message to Jewish New Yorkers who feel you won't be tough enough in your response to anti-Semitic incidents?
That I'm looking forward to being the next mayor of New York City and fulfilling the commitment I've made to Jewish New Yorkers over the course of this campaign, which is a commitment to not only protect them across the 5 boroughs, but to celebrate and cherish them. And what that looks like is rooting out anti-Semitism. It looks like increasing funding for hate crime prevention programs by 800%. And it also looks like ensuring that we have NYPD protection outside of synagogues and temples, especially on the high holy days. And I want to just say, recently on Yom Kippur, there was a horrific anti-Semitic attack in Manchester. A rabbi in New York City reached out to me and said, could you ensure that there's additional police protection outside of the synagogue for today? I said, absolutely. And I also asked, what if that rabbi did not know the next mayor of New York City? We have to make it so that it doesn't matter who you know. It matters that you will get that safety and security because you're a New Yorker. That's the administration I'm going to put together.
All right, I do want to talk a little bit about the future of the Democratic Party. A number of Republicans are casting you as the face of the Democratic Party. Mr. Mayor-elect, I wonder, do you think that Democratic socialists can win across the country in battleground states, for example?
Socialists.
On the importance of dignity for working people.
Marxist.
Something that appeals to people across.
Which is not a dirty word for most people, which, I mean, I say that, but we have to realize that what that means, especially to the young generation, we have to explain what our issues are. We can't just throw the word around and think that, ooh, that's magic and everybody is suddenly like, oh no, socialist, I don't want that. People want it. It's not that they don't understand what it is. They want something different. They want something different. Okay.
That when you speak to those constituencies with the same respect you speak to any other, you will see that they will then engage in the process. We saw an increase in voter turnout amongst 18 to 29-year-olds by more than 300%. And that's because we spoke to them as New Yorkers who are facing an affordability crisis, not as young people we have to finger wag to participate in democracy.
And you can watch my full.
Okay. First of all, the rent is so high. The utilities are so high that I wear layers inside because I don't want to put the heat on. So that's, you're going to see that. You're going to see that from me. You're going to see hats and, things so that I can not have to, give an arm and a leg to the utilities in New York. Okay, New York City. Oh, let me finish the point about physics, quantum physics, and attention, just very, very briefly. And I have the bibliography for Kianga Ellis Projects stacked here, and this is not even all of it, of course. But the whole point about physics has to do with, the quantum physics is the superstate is this idea that where attention goes is how reality forms. What you look at, what you pay attention to, that there's like infinite possibilities that at a submolecular level, at a level that's totally invisible to the, that's super microscopic. It's like smaller than microscopic. That reality exists in a spectrum of possibilities. And this is scientifically observed as fact. And that what manifests, what crystallizes in a way out of infinite possibilities is entirely determined by where you look, by observation. So that's the big thing about quantum physics that is instructive when we think about our attention, what we look at, certainly what we speak and what we talk about, but what we focus on has a way of manifesting. And that's why the propaganda and predictive programming and all of it, the whole society of the spectacle is so critical to understand. And that's why I have to limit what I look at and talk about, because I don't want to feed the beast. We're feeding the beast. we're feeding the beast by what we look at and what we give our attention to. So we've got to find this path where we do keep an eye on, you know, the reality show that is our lives and what's being performed for us, so we know a little bit about the arena, right? But we've got to put some boundaries around that and discipline our intake and discipline where we look. So some of you know how deep this New York City situation is for me. My family roots. So I've talked earlier about, oh, let's see Amy Klobuchar. That was quick.
It is very dangerous. You have leading members of Congress telling troops to disobey orders. I think that's unprecedented in American history.
Secretary Bassett just said this was a complete mistake. They should retract it. What do you make of that? Should they retract it? Is it dangerous, as the Speaker said?
Well, what is dangerous is not restating what is in the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which says that our troops cannot follow unlawful orders very clearly. What is dangerous is the President of the United States threatening these members of Congress with death. Literally,
this is not the point. I'm not even going to platform her. I have this live stream. I am not going to platform this nonsense that Amy Klobuchar is about to say. To further to what I was just talking about in terms of our attention. And, you know, watching as I was saying before an earlier break, watching the American Revolution, trying to put ourselves back in time and just to fathom life in the 1700s on this soil. So I'm in Albany right now. I am just like steps away from the old city hall where Benjamin Franklin proposed. I was learning about this yesterday. I posted something on my personal X handle, which is @FHO Money. Future History of Money is what that stands for. FHO Money is my personal handle. And it was funny, so watching American Revolution, and they're talking about this Albany plan, Albany Union Plan, which is where we get, you know, join or die, in that graphic of the snake cut into 13 pieces to represent the 13 colonies. And Benjamin Franklin came to Albany, in the city hall of Albany, which is just right there. And I walked past it in one of my afternoon walkies videos this week. And so I'm steps also, you know, my office is steps away from the New York State Capitol building as well. It's so meaningful to be physically in these places where this country emerged, the nation, the political nation that we have today, you know, where it emerged, how it emerged. So yeah, growing up in Boston, being taken on field trips to, you know, the Tea Party site and, you know, Bunker Hill, all of it. It's definitely why I am so like obsessed right now in this political moment. And as much as I could get dragged in to the distraction or the theatrics of who the new mayor-elect is and what is going on, what this bromance is all about, and how we even saw during that election just some very strange political dynamics. And again, you know, it was very, very eye-opening in a painful way to see some of the moves around the election in New York City. I have long family roots in New York City, you know, from the 19th century, immigrants through Ellis Island. And so that is my family connection, my connection to New York City. even though I was born in Boston. I'm the only person in my family born in Boston. So it's the connection to New England is me. It's me. And then, the other parts of my origin story are a really fascinating mix of the American experience. And as I go through this next year with Kianga Ellis Projects, and we're in 2026, and we're celebrating the 250th year, and we have the midterms, yeah, we're not platforming Amy Klobuchar. Sorry, not today. This is what we all can do, and what we all can do to feel that there's hope, to feel that there's action we can take. And I talk always about citizen adjacent action. So, we're at a moment of crisis in terms of our confidence in leadership and our belief in political parties and the system and all of it. It is absolutely comprehensible, rational, and understandable that a new generation is saying, we don't want any of it. We don't want any of this, which is why Marxist, socialist, communist is just meaningless to throw out there as a boogeyman to people. And I think also it's a good time for us to revise, reboot our language. Okay? The boomers still have us speaking in the language, operating in the iconography and the aesthetics of their coming of age moment. I mean, guys. And the more that we're online and communicating in these silos through the metastasization of the spectacle, the more that's our only frame of reference, and we're not inventing new ones. The conditions for us to really do the things that are going to reshape society, they're not necessarily naturally occurring. And we have this sensation of we have the sensation of it, but that's a simulation. So this is why with this project, with Kianga Ellis Projects 25, the 25-year plan, and what I believe we really have to do in this year leading up to our nation's 250th birthday is look back in order to look forward. And it's to try to extract ourselves from the boxes that each of us lives in because of where we were born, how we were born, and then how the algorithms are directing us and how the AI is reprogramming us. These are things that we have to be very intentional and have a design for how to counteract the way all of this is influencing our being, our thoughts, and what we believe is possible. And how do we get across these silos? And how do we, and I don't just want to say come together and unity and diversity, like we need to find new words. So it's also a project of how do we kind of talk about the source? How do we validate what we sense and what we feel and what our experience is? But we need a new vocabulary, which is why, the origins of Kianga Ellis Projects in the visual arts is very useful to continue to integrate with all of this. So yeah, back to all of those things about New York. I want to recommend a podcast for everyone, New York's Finest. And again, if you go to my personal X, I'll retweet their podcast. If you want to hear a perspective from the NYPD, and if you want to get behind the news on these machinations in New York City, because you're going to keep hearing about it. The media is based in New York, and, so they're naturally obsessed with it. And of course, yes, it's the largest city and the financial capital, and New York City is very, very, significant. But we've got to contain how entertaining it all is and be a little bit skeptical of how it's being presented, these characters, the political characters in the drama, because we have to also be about our adjacent action, what it is we are doing individually. And I'm proposing Friends of Kianga Ellis Projects. So we do this as a friend circle, we do this together as a group, and that we do it on chain. And that the circle of trust, all of this is connected, everybody. This is connected. See, I'm just bringing together all these disciplines because they're all sort of mirror images of, let's see what's next, a mental model, a map, a decentralization. I mean, there's so much there that we can draw upon outside of the matrix that is going to animate our lives day to day, help us, just sort of like feel better in a constructive way, and to come at the question of what it is we can actually do. What is it that doesn't have dependencies on things that are going away, that are temporary, that are untrustworthy, all the things that we're kind of up against. Oh, look at baby
And that
Marco.
would be a swift response, certainly from Anthony's. Our moral credibility, our ability to call Putin a murderer because he is, our ability to call Assad a murderer because he is, our ability to confront Maduro in Venezuela, or any of these other human rights atrocities like what we see in China, all of that is undermined and compromised if we somehow decide that because an ally who's important did that, we're not going to call it out. So I will just say this to you with full confidence. If this is proven to be true, there's going to be a response from Congress. It's going to be nearly unanimous. It's going to be swift, and it's going to go pretty far. And that could include arms sales, but it could include a bunch of other things as well.
When we come back, President Trump unexpectedly embraces Zoran Mamdani and clashes with Marjorie Taylor Greene. The panel is next.
I remember that. Marco Rubio. All right. I feel that okay, we'll tune in a little bit. I'll keep my eye on the commercial. We'll tune in a little bit to the panel. But again, this media obsession with these characters having to do with the New York City mayoral race, we have to be very suspect. And we know this, and this is why the ratings are so low. This is why traditional media is not followed, doesn't have the influence, doesn't have a certain kind of influence, doesn't have sort of popular influence, but the influence it still does have is extremely powerful. So we pay attention to it. But it's not educating us. It's not informing us. It's not doing anything but mind control. And so a serious person right now just recognizes that. And even if it's giving you your version or what makes you feel good based upon who you are or what you want to believe is true, we just should always understand that there's an agenda with so much of the content that's put in front of us. And we don't want to be controlled by it. We don't want to be controlled by it. So, I was not pleased to see the news about Marjorie Taylor Greene stepping aside from Congress. And all that I want to say about that is not get into what her reasons are and the back and forth and all of that, but just as an example of where we are in our politics. And I had the same reaction when, let me keep an eye on this. We're going to watch a little bit of the beginning of the panel. Because we are just here to do that. So we're going to do a little bit of it, as much as I hate to actually suffer through it. But Jared Golden, the rep for 2nd District in Maine, our rep in Maine, and for him to step aside. So What began 250 years ago is it's the disintegration of that is real, and we have to step up as citizens. And stepping up doesn't just mean now we're going to join this political party. Now we're going to rally behind these candidates. And the folks in the Republican Party who are browbeating their base about not turning up to the polls, I mean, I have a lot of views about that. And in this category of low information, low propensity voters, we just need to knock harder. We just need to browbeat them more. You know, look, citizen adjacent action means we as people have to look out for ourselves now. There is a role for engaging in the political process. I stand for that. I stand for a continuation. I stand for a remaking. I stand for, a revisiting of the words that made us. So this is America's Constitutional Conversation, 1760 to 1840. It's a very big book. But we're going to have to go back to primary source materials. All right, let's hear.
In the Oval Office, and then we had one of the president's biggest loyalists, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, announced she's resigning amid this big feud of President Trump. What do you make of it?
What a world, what a show, by the way, to hear talk about the way that behind closed doors with President Trump, really giving us some insight into the way that he tried to use their sort of commonalities here, not just the voters, the constituency, but also, the real estate lingo, talking to him about that, and I'm trying to get on this level there. I was speaking with somebody in the Trump orbit who's close to the president just last night who said, listen, there is a transactionality to this too. President Trump sees that by cozying up to Zohran Mamdani that there may be something in it for him. And perhaps that thing is the thing that Mamdani ran on, which is affordability, which is one of the president's current, potential liabilities here. Your press secretary mentioned on this too, and that's a real part of it.
Jim, how do you see what President Trump got out of Friday and this new relationship?
It reminds me of the old line that America has no permanent friends or enemies, only permanent interests. Donald Trump's interest is being surrounded by life's winners. Mamdani is a winner. It's a win-win. Trump gets to be around a young, charismatic winner who happens to be from New York, and he's fast.
I hate that this is the conversation. This has nothing to do with anything that is you need to be focused on right now, that I need to be focused on right now.
Keep the federal dollar flowing to New York, and you get to keep the National Guard away from New York, at least for the time being. But don't forget, with Trump, nothing's ever permanent, right? So once Trump sees a clip on the air, he'll be back to calling him a loser, man. It's a matter of time.
Well, their differences are real, Sarah. And I guess the question is, President
We're not
Trump
falling
had
for
been
it.
painting him as the face of the Democratic Party. Other Republicans had jumped on that bandwagon. How does that strategy move forward now?
Well, I think, first of all, it was one meeting, and also after your interview, Kristen, I'm not sure. Let's watch the Street Social later today and see if the bromance breaks up. But I argue that it was wise politically for the president to embrace that. We've seen in this last month, 2 of the 20 largest cities in America elect a socialist mayor. You contrast that with 2 women elected governor from Virginia and New Jersey who were more mainstream. Which is going to be the face of the Democratic Party? For Donald Trump and people with R on their name, behind their name on the ballot next year, you could argue Zohran Mamdani is a much better face of the Democratic Party and the group of Democrats you want to run against.
Well, Secretary Johnson, all of this is going on against the backdrop of this intensifying feud that I discussed with our guests this morning over this extraordinary video that was posted by Democratic lawmakers calling on U.S. service members not to follow orders that are illegal. You heard the backlash from Secretary Bessent, very forceful, saying it should be retracted. What do you make of this? How does it play out?
Before I was DHS, I was the senior lawyer for the Department of Defense. There's a well-developed body of law going back to the Nuremberg trials, the Vietnam era, that someone in the field is entitled and required to disobey an order if it is
manifestly.
Do you see you see what is being done here? That is not the point. I'm not going to platform what he's about to say because I know what they're saying. The issue is, what was this move of having members of Congress speak to our military in the way that they did? That is the question. They're changing the subject to have you sort of focus on whether or not the administration or Trump is giving unlawful orders. Maybe you have feelings about that. Their defense is, well, the military does not have to obey and should not obey unlawful orders. But that is not the problem of what occurred. The problem of what occurred is that we have civilians. We have a constitution. We have a form of government that is unique in the history of the world, that kicked off almost 250 years ago. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, there's a documentary on PBS right now. You can watch it online, you can stream it, if you missed it last week, you can watch it. I watched it yesterday, and it is what it is. You know, it is a version. But I think watching that documentary gives you a really good appreciation of how necessary it is that the command and control, the command apparatus and design of military has to work a certain way. It has to work a certain way. And if you are for democracy, if you are for this republic, then I think it's reasonable that you respect this republic and you respect the democracy that you are accusing Trump of sabotaging. But then, you know, the party that is pointing the fingers about no kings wants to do an end run around who the people selected through the constitutional process to be the commander-in-chief. Like, that was a legitimate, I mean, that's right. I mean, which is it? Either we have stolen elections, we have fake politics, either it's all theater and illegitimate, in which case I believe the document says we have a right to change it. I mean, so, you know, the reason I've started this friend circle is because I just want to have the real conversations. I just want to have the real conversation. This is not the real conversation. Hot takes on X is just not the real conversation. So, quantum physics teaches us that where we put our attention is what manifests as our reality. So with Kianga Ellis Projects, KEP 25, the Rural Rapid Response Network, all the structures, all the design, all the activities, citizen adjacent action, you know, what it is we are doing with what we have. We're not like focused on, well, I don't have this, I can't do that. It's this person's fault. It's this group of people's fault. You know, this politician needs to do X. This political party needs to do Y. We don't have any more time to point the finger. I mean, we're just out of time. We're out of runway. We're out of runway. So the citizen adjacent action focus for this project is what can we do with what we do have that does not have centralized points of failure. We are not going to build our hopes and our activities on things that are temporary or that can go away. So this is why the Republican, the conservative perspective, for me, is just sort of the only possible construct to architect from, right? And you really want to just push out of your mind. I mean, this is my request. However those words sit with you, they sit with you poorly. MAGA, Republican, whatever. I mean, this has been my journey of coming from a background where, growing up in Massachusetts, a member of the Black community, obviously, I was very fortunate in terms of the schools that I went to and, the jobs and professions that I've had. So, my world was all liberal, super liberal, Democrat, everything. And I really never had an example in the Republican Party and in Republican politics that I could easily identify with. So it was already a situation where everyone I knew, everyone I went to school with, family, friends, like profession, all of that was Democrat. And I always had a resistance to fully identifying, so I was independent for a long, long time. And when I did first register as a Republican, the blowback was just brutal, absolutely brutal. And I struggled in New York City, of course. It's like I was often voting for Democrats because some of them were my friends. I mean, I went to school with them or I knew them. And we're talking like 20 years ago. And I really did try to find a community in the Republican Party in New York City. I wanted to learn. I said, okay, even if what's around me doesn't feel good or is not very embracing of me, I needed to find something to anchor on. And I thought, I'll look historically. I remember the day that I just got so frustrated as an independent. I could never vote in the primaries. I just found the hypocrisy in the Democrat Party to be unpalatable. And once again, it wasn't like Republicans. It was like there was 80 Republicans that I, was like felt good. So I was like, all right, let me read the history. Let me go back to the history, because maybe if I really study what are the principles, right? Ignore the people, but go back to the platform and the principles. Maybe that's where I could get my footing around, how I'm going to personally politically identify. And so, I did that. And I still didn't find camaraderie. I still didn't find other people. Again, we're talking like 20 and 15 years ago, sort of mid 2000s, I would say, is around this time. And it was a time of, 9/11. It was fresh in New York City, and Bloomberg being the mayor, Pataki being the governor. So it was a time where Republicans had political, although obviously Mike Bloomberg, he's a Democrat, but Pataki is proper Republican, and obviously Giuliani is proper Republican. So I grew up, so my professional life, my early adulthood life, grew up in that era. And yet I still just had trouble fully embracing or even finding community as being Republican curious. And so that's just a little rabbit hole, because I feel this is a similar time of needing to go back to, first principles, or where it's going to be helpful for us to go to primary source materials, thinking about not just these words we're throwing around, democracy, republic. Oh, there's another Democracy in America is another book that belongs in the bibliography, right? There's so many books. But we should do this work of not just taking the sound bites and running with it in terms of forming our point of view or expressing ourselves, and certainly not in terms of how it shapes our activity beyond the electoral process, but becoming more responsible, taking agency about our communities locally, our neighbors, where we are, the political governance structures. And my particular, I'm focused in rural communities, rural America, rural New York and New England. But we can't really only have the conversation about rural America. The capital cities, so Albany, where I am now, and Boston, where I'm from, and Augusta, Maine being like the future for Kianga Ellis. So, New York being my history, so generationally, and other parts of the country, but New York generationally, where also I have grown up and lived. And then, Boston being my own unique birth and origin story. And, Maine anyway, which was part of Massachusetts, right? This geographical focus, it's useful and critical that we're also thinking about and connecting to the governance centers of our cities, so that we have these nodes in this network that are the capitals, Albany, Boston, Augusta. And, to some extent, it is personal for me in terms of New York City and the politics and what our activity, where we're going to be looking in terms of our activity. And also my conviction that those of us of like mind truly are those of us who are like-minded and willing to actually do something about it, put ourselves on the line for it, we're probably in the minority. And so regionally, it makes sense to have a regional focus, that we're both hyper-local and broad in how we're architecting our connections and our behavior. And so that's where being on-chain, natively on-chain, is useful. That's where we can use the technology. That's why there's this focus on crypto in this project. It is not for investment purposes. It is not to get rich quick. It is not as a panacea or a solution for our money problems. And I'll talk a lot about that in the course of all the things. But these books about the Internet of Money and blockchain and the future of everything and the tokenization and all of that, we are using this as an instrument to assist us in getting through this transition period, making sure that we have a nation and we don't just fall for optics, but we are concerned with the substance. What time is it? I'm just going on. This is supposed to be a watch party. You guys too are supposed to be watching the show that I'm just talking. Hang on. Let's see what's next. Let's see what's on. It's 8. Let's go to let's see what's on the second half of Face the Nation.
Is the president holding himself to the same standard that he is asking of others when it comes to dialing back dangerous rhetoric?
Everybody knows that the president is famous for his unfiltered social media. But if you take at face value the idea that calling your opponents traitors and then specifically saying that it warrants the death penalty is reckless, inappropriate, irresponsible. There are a number of other ways to describe it, but it's not something that is helping the country heal wounds. I think it stirs things up, and really, I think we can do better.
Well, on the Homeland Security front, I understand you are chair of that committee, and so you have some insight into some of these domestic threats. It's not just these Democratic lawmakers. We saw out in the state of Indiana, 4 Republican state senators were targeted by swatting threats amid President Trump's public pressure on them to redistrict their state. Just a few weeks ago, we did see one of the convicted January 6 rioters, who was then pardoned by President Trump, arrested for threatening to kill minority leader Hakeem Jeffries. I mean, are we at the point here where it's not just unfiltered social media posts, but truly dangerous rhetoric?
Well, I've been on the receiving side of this. Even my father, who's been retired for some time, has been on the receiving end of swatting. Police are called, says there's an emergency in the home, and the goal is to, have someone draw a gun and be killed as the police come in, supposedly to rescue someone who's not really in need of being rescued. So I think both sides have been doing this, and I think the language on treason and traitors, both to Republicans and Democrats, is, as I said, reckless, inappropriate, irresponsible.
Do you think so one of the other developments we've seen just over the weekend is that Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, Republican from Georgia, just a staunch supporter for so long of the president, has said she is going to step away because she's paid such a public price for some of her positions. Do you think there is room in your party for disagreeing with President Trump?
I think it's important that we have independent voices. So I'm sad to see her voice go away, or potentially go away. I think that she brought up something in the last week or so that was very important. What is the Republican plan for healthcare? So I've engaged the president on this, and I'm putting forward my own plan. But in my plan, what it allows for is people to buy their insurance through collective, basically to buy their insurance through Costco or Sam's Club or Amazon. And mine is the only plan out there that would actually drive prices down. But that's what an independent voice will help in our country, independent voice within the Republican caucus, not to see things always inside the box, but to think of some out-of-the-box solutions. So I think independent voices are important in the Republican Party.
I want to ask you, because of your position on Homeland Security, you may have some insight into the drug cartels. You were also on Senate Foreign Relations, and it is tomorrow that the Trump administration officially will designate the Cartel de los Soles as a foreign terrorist organization. That's the cartel the Trump administration says is linked to Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. Secretary Hicks says it gives the administration new tools. Nothing's on or off the table, he says, militarily. Legally, what changes tomorrow? What becomes possible?
I think by doing this, they're pretending as if we are at war. They're pretending as if they've gotten some imprimatur to do what they want. When you have war, the rules of engagement are lessened. So, for example, we normally don't shoot boats that we suspect of being drug dealers. In fact, if the Coast Guard tomorrow started shooting all vessels that are off of Miami or off of San Diego, about 1 in 4 of the vessels that they normally board doesn't have drugs. So it actually would be unlawful if the Coast Guard started blowing up boats. But for some reason, they say, oh, we're at war off the coast of Venezuela. And so it's a different rule of engagement. It's one of war. But, Senator Kaine and I brought this up. And we said, if it's war, let's declare it as war. Let's have this discussion. Is it war or not? And the administration refused that. They want to have it both ways. They want to say, oh, we can just say these people are terrorists or narco-terrorists, so we can blow them up. But it's extraordinary that when some of them survive, they pluck them out of the water. They don't prosecute them for drugs. They don't collect drugs. They don't tell us if they're armed or not. They just send them back to their country, most of the time not being Venezuela. They've sent one back to Colombia and one back to Ecuador. But nobody's making any pretense of even interviewing them to find out who's selling you the drugs. Maybe we could find out who the kingpins are if they're involved in the drug trade. Not a word. And I've been given zero, not one briefing, because I'm skeptical of what they're doing. They don't brief me or the General Senate at all. A few hand-selected people may have gotten a briefing, but I have not been invited to any briefing.
Persona non grata.
Well, that's fairly unusual given your Homeland Security role, and that the premise for some of this action has to do with both immigration and drug policy, according to the president. I know the DEA administrator recently spoke to our Nicole Skanga and told her that they have seen between a 30 to 45% increase in cocaine prices per kilogram due to these DOD boat strikes and
cocaine inflation
routes for delivery.
It's hitting everyone.
In other words, there's still demand for the drugs, and the cartels are just finding different routes to deliver them. Have you seen any evidence that the president's actions to date are winning a drug war?
I think we should be trying to work on the demand side, treating it as a health problem, as an addiction problem in our country, and trying to lessen the demand. And that is part of the overall solution. The war on drugs, though, to capture all the people selling drugs, the price goes up and more people are attracted to it. A couple of the people that have been identified as being on these boats are simply down on their luck, people with no prospect who are offered $500 to get on a boat, race across the ocean. And so there always will be those people. There's probably a limitless number of those people in South America. There's been some benefit when we've cooperated with countries and with governments, but that's not what this is. And I fear that this is not going to do anything for the drug trade, but it is really going against the rule of law in the way in which we interact with people on the high seas. And it has no precedent.
I've seen you quoted as saying there are people in the administration who have wanted to go to war in Venezuela for some time. Who are you talking about?
I think it's clear that Senator Rubio, as a senator, was very much an advocate of regime change. This was at odds, really, with President Trump. And so when he was
No new wars.
People who've been supportive of President Trump were, oh my goodness, they're picking someone much more hawkish and much more eager to be involved and to intervene in other countries. And so people worried. And then the first year or so, people were like, oh, well, Rubio's done a good job on foreign aid, and they've cut back on all of the abuse of these NGOs around the world. And I think the people supporting the president have been very supportive of the Secretary of State. But I think once there's an invasion of Venezuela, or if they decide to re-up the subsidies and the gifts to Ukraine, I think you'll see a splintering and a fracturing of the movement that has supported the president, because I think a lot of people, including myself, were attracted to the president because of his reticence to get us involved in foreign war.
Well, to date, they say nothing on or off the table, no specifics. We'll continue to track all the reporting on that. Senator Rand Paul, thank you for your time today. We'll be back in a moment.
Oh, we appreciate Rand Paul so much, don't we? I don't know how he's him. I don't know how he's who he is, but we are grateful. We are so grateful for that. And yeah, I don't know what I was saying before that, but I don't think anyone is in a position to critique MTG for her decision. We do not know her story. We are sad at what it means, what it looks like to serve in government 250 years later, watch the American Revolution documentary, and, just try to think of what the times were, what the mindsets were for every single soul who was on this soil, all of the people who are on this soil and their circumstances. So I appreciate that documentary for getting more granular and not just, giving the Disney postcard version of the history, because we've got to deal with all of that nuance, and grapple with the fact that if no one wants to serve in these roles, then we literally have collapse. We absolutely have collapse. And so that just gives me a nice segue, my bibliography that's here, to share my appreciation for a certain gentleman in the state of Massachusetts who's putting his whole life into this service. God bless him, John Deaton, for Massachusetts. And as we see, some of the most, in my humble opinion, people with just unbelievable grit, and who I have appreciated, where they are or where they have been at different times and how they have approached the role, even though, you know, not a Republican, Democrat, Jared Golden, 2nd District in Maine, said, uncle, no thanks, thanks but no thanks. And, you know, the whole arc with MTG just, it's alarming, and it's alarming writ large as to, you know, how we are going to govern, how we are going to be governed going forward. And so that's the, I don't know who this is. Let's see, who is this?
Have been already widely discussed in public.
Are you aware of Russia making any concessions at this point?
Well, it is not seen this way from the proposal which is on the table. In fact, none of the points are actually related to forcing anything on the Russian side. Of course, it's recognized that it is aggression. There is a number of points related to return of hostages and prisoners of war, of a humanitarian nation. But this is definitely not about the justice. This plan is not about the justice and the truth of this war and the aggression. It's about, you know, ending the war and stopping the military engagements.
It's unfair to Ukraine, you're saying?
Well, again, I think this should be divided. This plan is not about justice, you know, and this plan is about
Ambassador and Ukraine ambassador to the U.S.
as part of estimated agreement between Ukraine and potentially Russian Federation. Ukraine is in intensive engagement in a very constructive way with the American side, and under the umbrella of U.S. leadership, these discussions are ongoing, and we believe that the fair peace is not the words, but this is something that should be put on the paper. So, yes.
Have you been told that the United States will cut off military and intelligence sharing if President Zelensky doesn't agree to this plan by Thursday?
I think it's totally unfair to American colleagues and partners to quote these or that statements which were done in course of, you know, various meetings and phone calls. There was quite a few. You know, we had a first senior military visit to Ukraine by Secretary of Army Driscoll since we gained the independence in 1991, and I had a meeting with him as well here in Washington, and his role is extremely clear to us. We also had an engagement between President and Vice President on a phone call. There was like a lot of discussions. Some of them were more emotional, some were less emotional. But here we are, we're sitting together and looking for a solution to end the war. And Russia is not part of this process formally.
Well, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that in addition to those 28 points, there's a separate document that has to do with security guarantees. I have also been told that there's a separate document with security guarantees.
Yes.
The journal's reporting that it's 10 years of support, but it doesn't commit the U.S. to provide direct military assistance. What guarantees do you want from the United States?
Well, there is a separate document called the framework of the security assurances from the United States. So this is not the agreement, this is not the treaty, this is not the formal or detailed layout of what security guarantees is. That is the document specifying the intention that U.S. government is committed to providing security assurances, which are something like the Article 5 of
boots on the ground. There's this very euphemistic language. This is not going to work. We see it coming. The drums have been beating. The United States, even though we're obviously bankrupt, in case you were confused about some of the things that are going on, U.S. troops in Gaza, in Ukraine, There are some people that are trying to take us there. And I guess Venezuela and Mexico. We have to lead. Let's hear the rest of what she's saying, and then I'll come back.
Of different situations where we have learned our lessons and we faced the aggression for 3.5 years and we learned.
I have to ask you, US and European officials tell me that the trajectory on the battlefield for Ukraine is not good, particularly in that key industrial city of Pokrovsk. And that Russia will likely take control of this, and that this is sort of a gateway to the eastern part, the Donbass. How do you respond to the argument that Ukraine is losing on the battlefield and that you need to negotiate now?
Well, Ukraine is one of the largest European countries, and on a regular, within 1 week, there are more than 1,000 combat engagements happening on all the front line. And Russia is trying to present that it's only happening in Pokrovsk, right? So this is a victorious narrative Russia is using as a tactics of pressuring or changing the reality also here in the United States. That's why, I mean, Pokrovsk is a very important spot on the front line, but definitely not the only one.
Ambassador, thank you for your time this morning. We'll be right back.
Oh, I don't know. It's just, so we have to lead. What do I mean by that? Our elected officials are like leaving government. I don't know what that means for who's going to be left. What does that mean about who is going to want to run in the future? So my own belief is that if we want to have a future, like at all, just a future. I'm not even saying what kind, but if we just want to have one, it's going to be us, like me, unelected, unappointed, no special credentials. We have to take responsibility for all of this. I mean, whatever your situation is, I challenge you, as you ask yourself why, whatever ... that is in your life. Here's my challenge to you. If the answer is somebody else, like if the answer is, why is this happening in my life? Well, this happened to me. Well, this person did that. Well, this is going on over here. Well, we elected those people. Boop, 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 boop. If that is your answer, my challenge to you is to get another answer. To flip the question. Okay, I think Face the Nation is about to go off. So we're gonna see what's on Fox, and then we're gonna say adieu for today. But here's what we're doing with Kianga Ellis Projects. We're flipping the question. Here's what citizen adjacent action means. Okay. I participate in the reality in which I exist. Number one. There's a lot of threads we could go on with that statement. And I talked a little bit about that with quantum mechanics and our attention and what we focus on, kind of collapsing into what manifests. So there's that. If that's true, if that's a scientific fact, then there is a perspective that says, I have contributed. I don't care what it is that you are upset about or what it is you think is the problem. There is a legitimate argument that can be made that, You have participated. This is not about blame. See, these are the things we have to get over. We have to get over ourselves. We have to get over ourselves. This is painful. We have to do it. You have to get over yourself and look in the mirror. And if there's no other reason, if there's no, everyone can always find what they have contributed by omission, by what you didn't pay attention to, by what you didn't know. I mean, it's often just like my own ignorance has contributed to, my whatever. I mean, this is a bigger sort of life journey, work. But it's important that I just point that out, because the exercise that I'm committed to, that the path we're going to take with Friends of Kianga Ellis Projects, the Circle of Trust, and how our activities individually then together in our local communities connects across New York and New England specifically, but then this broader concept of a multi-stakeholder response network. So I haven't even really I've been able to talk to you all, which is not the point of this live stream, the Rural Rapid Response Network. But it's multi-layered, but it has to start at home. It has to start it actually really has to start in the heart. But then it's about okay, we have to step up, and we have to step up as people in this nation, on this soil. We can look back 250 years, and we ought to make sure we have really the right understanding as to what the facts are. But I think also empathizing and visualizing the people, the struggle, the things that we've overcome, and to accept the complexity of it, to reject the notion of shame, to reject how our history in this nation has been manipulated. And I hate this word weaponized, but it's so effective. How do we get behind all of those narratives and ways in which the story of America has been told to different groups, and that telling, particularly over the last number of generations in the arc of my own life, so the 50 years, very significant historical period, the 70s until now. I mean, really obviously defining the previous 50 years as a matrix for now is very significant. But I think it's more significant than just now, as in it's always now, whatever year you're in, but we're in a now that is this culmination of so many gigantic historical arcs. And so it's a privilege to live in now. And according to my faith, it's not accidental that you were born at such a time as this. And as difficult as it is, it's kind of cool to think that what you do and that your life can participate in what the world will be for the next 250 years. It's certainly what's going to happen here on this soil. But I believe that, with every fiber of my being, that is how significant November 23rd, 2025 is. And that there's maybe never been a moment, certainly not in the last 250 years, that who you are matters so much. And that is, I think, the bright side of what's so dark. And that's the opportunity in the chaos. is that we might be able to pull some off here. When I say we, I mean the little people, the Davids. So that's weird. That's what we are. We're the Davids. This is a project for the Davids. And it's about our action. It's about our agency. It's about what we're doing alongside of all of the official engagement, all of the official politics. You know, I believe in the American system, in the American experiment. I believe that it was brilliant and it's beyond humans. So we don't have to turn our founding fathers or any particular, no one has to be a hero or a villain here, because the American project is bigger than all of them and all of us. And so what would it look like for us to not think about what the founding fathers wanted and what they said, but what was animating them? Something was animating them that was bigger than them. As you watch American Revolution, and they didn't shy away from some of the gross, I don't want to say hypocrisy, but just the ironies, the inherent contradictions. You know, this is not to demonize anybody. Like, we're adults here. We are not wonderful as a species, and that's okay. So for me, and part of why I ended up just pulling all of these books, and I was like, oh, what is the bibliography and the histories? It's like, I want to get beyond just the human narrative of the founding of the United States of America. But I'm very curious if 250 years later, we have the perspective of time. Do we have the maturity? Do we have the humility to think in longer historical terms? What was the point? Why? How did this happen? Why did this happen? And where should we take it? I don't want to burn it. I mean, there's some things I want to burn down. There's some things I want, and I use that metaphorically. I do not want to see any violence. That's just my platform. A revolution of the heart, a revolution of the spirit. That's my focus. And, you know, I'm going to stay away from what other people have to say about the kinetic realities of war and all that. I don't know. I'm going to stay away from that. I'm going to talk about, you know, the revolution of the heart, the spiritual battle, and an inquiry that requires us to look in the mirror, that requires us to, love our neighbor as ourselves, and invites us, as we become engaged, as we step up as citizens, as we stand in the gap, not just for our political process, which we have to do. But we don't. We know who's in the driver's seat now. And that is the same if you were like Democrat or Republicans. I mean, that's the same. Whoever in our current situation, who's in the driver's seat of what actually happens. So individually, that's something we can do, is recognize that our governance, our leaders, they need our help. They need our help. We have to be the heroes of this story. Citizen adjacent action. What can we do with what we already have that's not dependent on centralized points of failure, things that go away? Our dependencies are going to be, on ourselves and our families, our friends, our neighbors, our communities. So we have to step up. We have to design the vision. We have to say, well, what was the point of the last 250 years? And in order to have an answer, we have to know what happened over the last 250 years, and the 250 years before that, and the 500 years before that, and the 1,000 years before that. I mean, that's the opportunity here. It's not just to save yourself. It's for the future, tactical futurism. What is the future going to be? We can choose it. And I think if we have the opportunity to architect it, then we should. We have to. No one else is going to do it for us. No one else is going to do it for us. Tactical futurism, citizen adjacent action. All right, let's just see. Let's find out. I know we're not giving Fox very much airtime, but
Blue Wellness Clinics in Phoenix, Arizona.
How long have you all been coming here?
We were trying to figure it out, maybe 10 years.
At least 10 years.
How old are you guys? If you don't mind me asking. I'm 58 and
let's see what's on the Sunday briefing.
add a little bit on top of your toothpaste when you brush your teeth.
I mean, a lot of times, you know, the same politicians will do, you know, the Fox, and they'll do, you know, the other more liberal leaning. And, you know, it's 8, 9, 10, 11. We've been going for 3 hours. So we're winding down. But let's just see what's going on. I like to catch Fox a little bit later in the day on Sunday. And then you get some other, you know, figures coming on in the later afternoon. But yeah, welcome to the Kianga Ellis Projects Sunday Shows Watch Party, the marathon of suffering through mainstream, you know, legacy media, political propaganda that we want to see. We want to see what the messaging is, so we know where we are, so we understand, you know, the current talking points. But then after this, we go and we do the real work. And what's the real work? While the commercial's still on, it's focusing on the things that aren't getting coverage, like the city council meetings, the local governance, the local meetings. Our activity is focused on attending the local meetings, which we can do virtually in so many cases, in rural, small towns, even the capital cities, right? We've identified that this is strategically important and it's going to benefit us as well. Like, as it's actually kind of, you know, fun and a nice shift. And if we do it together in the friend circle, and we publish our writings on chain, you know, something very exciting is going to be happening. And so I didn't really touch on that at all, because this is supposed to be a watch party for the Sunday shows, but I am talking a little bit about Kianga Ellis Projects on this, which is what do I mean on chain versus online? You know, how is this a blockchain native project? How are we going to use the tools as a coordination mechanism for a new financial model for being engaged and amplifying our voice? You know, how do we impact the broader reality when each of us is so limited in our resources, limited in our time, limited in our intention, and we don't have backing, we don't have, you know, we're not playing that game. What are our chances? So this is why, you know, all this stuff, the real stuff, the utility of it is so important. Okay, let's hear.
The Supreme Court has temporarily brought back Texas's redrawn congressional map after a lower court shut down, ruling that it was racially gerrymandered. The justices are weighing a longer-term decision on whether this redrawn district line is constitutional. For more, let's bring in former Assistant U.S. Attorney and Fox News contributor, Andy McCarthy. Thank you very much, Andy, for being with us this morning. I want to ask about this ruling because the lower court showed, according to some, that
in the end, this might be worse than a wash, at least if the lower court ruling ultimately stands and then California's map ends up moving forward. The Wall Street Journal editorial board writes this: Mr. Trump's attempt to bludgeon GOP state legislatures to redo their districts could turn out to be a misjudgment that costs Republicans their House majority. Do you see that panning out that way?
Well, I really do think, Jackie, that it depends on how this Texas case goes. It's very possible that that could happen because I think California is going to get their Democratic seats because they're kind of going about it with a unity of purpose, whereas the Texas outcome right now is very much in doubt. We'll have to see what happens. For the moment, they just have an administrative stay, which is a very brief pause so the court can kind of get its brain around what's in dispute. And then we'll know in the next few days, I think, whether, in which direction the court's going to proceed on this.
Congressman Kevin Kiley, he's obviously from California, has been ringing the alarm on this all along. He says this is why Newsom and the legislature removed the "only if Texas does it" language from Prop 50. California's gerrymander will stand even if the Texas map falls. If only someone had warned a redistricting war was utterly foolish. Was this a miscalculation, do you think? Especially when you look at the other red states that haven't necessarily gone, guns a-blazing into this redistricting fight.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the horizon that you look at this over. So I think in the short term, it could be catastrophic for Republicans if what you're thinking about is only the 2026 midterms. Because if the Texas thing doesn't pan out and California gets the 5 extra seats, there's a couple of other states in play, I think North Carolina and Missouri, but if the bottom line is the Republicans are going to lose this round. Now, I think if you consider it like going forward a decade or 20 years, the Democrats have wrung just about everything they could wring out of redistricting over the last number of decades, whereas the Republicans still have some upside to play with. So probably in the long term, if they're going to go this route, you may have more red seats. But in the short term, I don't think it's going to work out for them.
Okay. I also want to ask you about Comey, this case. On Thursday, federal prosecutors filed a notice correcting.
See, that's almost like the perfect segment to have after what it was I was saying about how important our local meetings are and our state governance apparatus. Of course, the national politics gets the biggest audience, gets the most attention, but following what's happening in our state legislatures and in our towns. And I would suggest also that in back of this redistricting stuff is an opportunity to not just be reactive, but that some of us should, take several steps back. Let's understand how we got here and what some of these principles are, and not just have that argument, but again, it's like, okay, well, wherever that shakes out, where are we going? where are we going with all of this? And we can decide, but we've got to take the time to listen, learn. And so with us, with Kianga Ellis Projects, our friend circle, starting to pick a local meeting that we want to show up to, not as a form of protest, not to be agitators, not to generate content for clickbait. This project is for real. Like, this is not for clicks. This is for our lives. And it's not going to be for everybody because this is not the work that gets all the dopamine hits and all of that and makes you an influencer. It doesn't make you very popular or interesting to watch. But somebody's going to do it. Somebody's going to do it. We've got to stand in the gap. We've got to be the ones that decide the future. So we have to have a vision for it that's not told to us or modeled for us through this sort of, media spectacle that we're in, or some AI generated, you know, transhuman I don't know. Whatever is being promoted as where we ought to take the next 250 years or the next 100 years, whatever. I don't know. I'm not really feeling it. So we have to do the work. We have to do I'm fading. I'm fading, everybody. I am seriously fading after 3 hours and 20 minutes. I'm gonna wrap this up. I've got the whole stack here of the bibliography, which I have covered in between. I've shown you a few of the books. We'll do another meeting where I'll talk more about the bibliography. This coming week is a holiday week in the US, so I don't know how active Kianga Ellis Projects will be. I will need to take more time than I expected leveling up on my my Web3 tooling. So at the end of this week, I went ahead. I mean, I already had a creator coin. So now I'm talking about our infrastructure that we're using for all these great things I'm saying are going to happen in terms of us, visioning the future, standing in the gap, redoing our politics, citizen adjacent action. How are we actually going to operate that? A new kind of, civic engagement, all of that. And the operationalizing of it, yes, it is on the blockchain. It is with the blockchain. It is also in person in real life, but it is using the blockchain. And I began the setup of that this week using the blockchain technology of the base, which is something called, now I'm going into a whole other area that I don't want to cover today, but in the world of blockchains, public internet infrastructure, the next version of the internet of money, the internet of many things, not the internet of get rich quick. We're not associating with any of that. But this internet of value, I like that word. I like that better. I've talked about all of this. I've previewed all of this in the essay. First, I got the Banny, then I got the Power. That is posted somewhere at Kianga Ellis, and it's on Substack. So if you look up at Kianga Ellis on Substack, you can find it. Of course, we'll be posting and talking about it. But just as a way of just to close out, this is a final, little where I'm going to leave you all for the day, for the weekend, is that having started to operationalize the specific tools for Friends of Kianga Ellis Projects. We have the juice box where you can donate, and it's a mechanism to be a token holder, which has governance stuff. If you're really curious or you're a real nerd about any of this, you can look at the bylaws on kiangaellis.com. But then there's the sort of the day-to-day. There's what, as a friend circle, as a circle of trust, we're actually going to be doing, how we do it, which is going to require quite a bit of friction, not only reading and writing and showing up to local meetings, but then how we are connected and communicating with each other. We are going to use the tools that we have that are, at a high level decentralized, censorship resistant. I mean, there's some concepts here that we will go deeper beneath them, and we'll talk about the extent to which they're true, the extent to which we are really getting the kind of sovereignty that we're after. There are many critiques that are valid about the activity that's going on this blockchain called Base, the apps that are connected, that we are going to use, that I use, that I'm excited about as I start using them, and I'm aware of the concerns, and I share some of them. The financialization of your creativity, and but that'll be a topic for another session. Meanwhile, as I dog food everything. It's like we're dog fooding, we're building the plane as we fly it, open kimono. So when I am on these apps, I've been in this space for 10 years. I am pretty literate. I mean, I'm not as literate as somebody who doesn't have other. I mean, I do other stuff as a lawyer. I mean, I can't put the kind of time, I don't put the kind of time into the use of the tech as other people. So I am a little bit boomer. I'm not a boomer, I'm an X, but I show my age sometimes in like trying to figure out this stuff, even though I'm very, very close to it. So this week was, yeah, I mean, it was not as seamless as I wanted to feel about it as I launched a personal writer's coin, as I just tried to set up, the infrastructure, the apps that we will use as a community. And that made me aware that I need to get more comfortable with using it. I've got to use it I've got to center it more. When I say it, now I'm talking about apps like Zora and Farcaster and Paragraph, things that I've used, that I'm on, but I haven't really fully embraced, right? But I feel their potential is tremendous, and I'm getting a better sense as I'm starting to pay more attention. And this particular evolutionary moment in the development of these apps and what the base community, this sort of second layer on top of the Ethereum blockchain network. I'm learning as I'm going as to how we can use these tools to good and strong effect. And one of the things I'm coming to understand is my own use of them. I need to level up my own experience with them before I kind of roll them out as something everybody just needs to like onboard and do. So there may be more time that I'm just doing the Friends of Kianga Ellis Projects stuff, and you can observe like what it looks like, and I'll be posting, and I'll do it more from my personal, as me, as a Kianga Ellis doing it. And then as those of you who want to, if you're already using those tools, if you're already super comfortable, then fantastic. Like, it would be just great to have some early community members who already understand the tools and are using the tools, which has largely been very, I haven't seen anybody kind of embrace politics or grassroots civic engagement, something that's not the outcome, and it is not about investment, but this does not make the speculation bad. This is the thing, the stuff that is very cringy and that people hate and they want to scare you about. That's actually why this can work. That's actually why a totally decentralized, really decentralized in terms of people like us, we are not centralized. And it's some of the things that we don't like, that make us cringe, that have happened, is part of the discovery process, and it will, at the end of the day, be part of the mechanism that gives us the fuel and the possibility to operate an offensive, a citizen offensive, to just the disintegration of our system of government that has some really good qualities, the really good point. We just need to keep working at it. So I'm going to be focused on that this week, leveling up my own use of these tools, and y'all be sharing that. And I wish everyone who celebrates or who mourns, depending on your perspective, the holiday that is this week in the United States, and for people elsewhere, have a great week. And yeah, I'll let you know, depending on where I'm at next weekend, if we'll do this next weekend, or maybe we'll skip a weekend. I don't know. We'll see. So stay tuned. Thanks for joining me on Sunday for the Kianga Ellis Projects Sunday Show's watch party. And yeah, that's it. That's it for now. Have a great day and a great week. Bye-bye.